Discover the hidden strategies of influence and success in the 48 Laws of Power. This captivating guide reveals the timeless rules of ambition, strategy, and control to help you navigate life's power dynamics like a master. Chapter 1: Never Outshine the Master. In the first chapter of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene presents the concept of never outshining the master. This law is built around the idea that, when working under someone, it's essential to avoid making them feel insecure or overshadowed. The core message is simple: if you make your superiors feel that their position is threatened by your abilities or talents, they will seek to diminish you. This is not only about being tactful but understanding the subtle dynamics of power in a relationship. Throughout history, Greene gives examples of individuals who unknowingly or consciously outshone their superiors and faced negative consequences. One such example is that of King Louis XIV of France, who was known for his paranoia and need for control. His court was full of ambitious nobles, but the ones who survived and thrived were those who knew how to maintain the king's sense of superiority. These individuals knew how to give him the credit and praise he desired, even when they were the true masterminds behind a project's success. Greene explains that it is natural for humans to seek acknowledgement and validation, especially from those above them. However, the problem arises when one's talent or brilliance begins to eclipse that of the master. Whether intentional or not, this creates an imbalance that can trigger feelings of resentment or jealousy. When you are constantly outshining your boss or mentor, they may feel threatened and start undermining you, making your position precarious. The law goes further by explaining that it's not just about hiding your talents, it's about learning the art of subtlety. You don't need to dumb yourself down, but you must learn how to navigate situations in a way that supports the ego of your superiors. This doesn't mean being fake or disingenuous, but rather understanding the power structure and acting within it. For example, when you achieve something impressive, it's often more strategic to share the spotlight and acknowledge the influence of your superiors in your success. One of the most important takeaways from this chapter is the idea of perception versus reality. The master's perception of their own status and power is more important than the reality of your own abilities. If you make them feel secure and important, they are more likely to view you favorably and even elevate your position. Conversely, if you make them feel small or threatened, they will likely make your life difficult, even if they don't overtly show it. This law also encourages you to be mindful of how you present yourself. While it's tempting to showcase your achievements and talents, a strategic approach is to demonstrate your value in ways that don't immediately challenge or undermine your superior. Sometimes, it's the art of playing the background that will bring you the most power, allowing you to shape events and influence outcomes without ever taking center stage. Greene highlights how important it is to recognize the insecurities and psychological needs of the people above you. Power dynamics are often governed by fear of being replaced, outshone, or overshadowed. By understanding this, you can navigate relationships more effectively, building influence while keeping your position secure. Instead of trying to be the star of the show, sometimes it's better to be the quiet force behind the scenes. Ultimately, never outshine the master isn't just about playing it safe, it's about strategic positioning. By respecting the need for hierarchy and learning how to subtly elevate the people above you, you gain a powerful advantage. This law is an important lesson in social dynamics, showing that real power often comes not from being the most brilliant or talented, but from knowing when and how to use your brilliance without threatening those in charge. Chapter 2: Never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. Chapter 2 of the 48 Laws of Power introduces the powerful law that suggests never putting too much trust in friends, and instead, learning how to use enemies to your advantage. On the surface, this law might sound counterintuitive. After all, aren't friends supposed to be the ones who help and support us? Greene, however, argues that in the realm of power, friends can often be more dangerous than enemies. This law is rooted in the idea that friends, although loyal, tend to have emotional ties and personal biases that can cloud their judgment. Friendships often come with expectations that can become burdensome. Friends may either become too complacent, thinking you won't betray them, or worse, they might expect something in return for their loyalty. These expectations can lead to misunderstandings, manipulation, or resentment. On the other hand, enemies are often more straightforward, they don't have emotional ties, and you can deal with them more rationally. Greene illustrates his argument with historical examples that showcase the wisdom of using enemies wisely. One notable example comes from the political world, the story of Cesare Borgia, the ruthless Italian prince and military commander. Borgia used his enemies to his advantage, forging alliances with former adversaries in a way that made them loyal to him. He did not try to win the affection of his enemies through friendship, but rather, he used their desire for self-interest and personal gain to secure his own power. By showing them that it was in their best interest to join him, Borgia managed to turn his enemies into valuable allies. Greene emphasizes that enemies are often more reliable than friends because they have nothing to lose by acting in their self-interest. They are straightforward, which can make them more predictable. When enemies are used strategically, they can be a source of power, as their willingness to fight for their own survival can benefit you as well. For example, you might use an enemy's ambition to create a partnership that advances both your interests. This is a delicate balance. While enemies may seem like they should be avoided, they can be transformed into powerful allies when handled with care. The law advises that instead of seeing enemies as adversaries to be defeated at all costs, one should view them as potential allies who can be manipulated for mutual gain. However, this does not mean trusting them blindly or letting them gain too much influence. Rather, it's about leveraging their position, their resources, or their desire for revenge against someone else to further your own agenda. Greene points out that you must always be aware of your enemy's motives and remain vigilant, but never underestimate their potential to be useful. Another key part of this law is the realization that over-reliance on friends can often lead to a false sense of security. Friends may protect you out of loyalty, but they may also be more likely to act out of personal interests, which can lead to betrayal or disloyalty when your power is threatened. Friends can also be envious, and while they may appear supportive, there can be a hidden resentment that may eventually cause problems. Enemies, however, may not harbor such negative feelings toward you and are, in a sense, more predictable because they have no emotional attachment to your success or failure. Greene also underscores that one of the greatest risks with friends is their tendency to become complacent or overconfident. When you build relationships with friends who are too close, you might assume they'll always have your back. This can blind you to potential threats they may pose, especially if their own interests change or if they begin to feel left out of your success. Enemies, by contrast, are more likely to be on the lookout for weaknesses that could be exploited, making them more careful and strategic in their actions. The key takeaway from this law is that power lies in understanding the value of both friends and enemies, but especially in the art of using enemies. By carefully managing relationships with former adversaries, you can create an environment where enemies become part of your strategy for success. The idea is to turn every relationship, whether friendly or antagonistic, into a tool for your own gain. Greene finishes the chapter with the advice that true mastery and power comes from understanding the dynamics of both friendship and enmity, and knowing when and how to play each side to your advantage. In the long run, the best alliances may not come from the people you trust most, but from those who initially seem to stand against you. Chapter 3, Conceal Your Intentions. Chapter 3 of the 48 Laws of Power is all about the power of secrecy, strategy, and keeping your true intentions hidden from others. Robert Greene argues that by revealing your plans and goals too early or to too many people, you invite unnecessary risk and opposition. By concealing your intentions, you maintain control over the narrative and can move more strategically without others being able to anticipate your next move. This law isn't about lying or being deceitful, it's about protecting yourself and your ideas from interference before you're ready to execute them. Greene draws from historical examples to illustrate how those in power often concealed their true motives to ensure success. One example is that of the famous military strategist, Sun Tzu, who famously wrote that all warfare is based on deception. Sun Tzu believed that deception was an essential part of strategy because it allows one to mislead the enemy, create confusion, and take the upper hand. By concealing your intentions, you avoid giving people the opportunity to plot against you or counter your plans before you're ready. The core idea of this law is that revealing too much of your strategy, goals, or desires too early is akin to giving away your power. People around you, whether friends, rivals, or colleagues, will start to form their own opinions about your plans. They may try to undermine you, sabotage your progress, or take credit for your ideas. By keeping your intentions hidden, you maintain the element of surprise and ensure that you have the upper hand. Greene encourages people to think of their goals and actions as part of a chess game, where you hold your cards close and don't reveal your next move until the right moment. One powerful historical example that Greene discusses is the story of the legendary courtesan and political player, Queen Elizabeth I of England. Queen Elizabeth was known for her ability to manipulate her courtiers and rivals by keeping her intentions hidden. When faced with political pressure or opportunities, she often would remain ambiguous, making it unclear whether she was in favor of a particular strategy or idea. This ambiguity kept her rivals on edge, unable to predict her next move. They would often waste energy trying to guess her intentions, allowing her to maintain control over the political landscape. Greene also warns about the dangers of being too transparent with people, especially those in positions of power. If you share your goals too openly, you risk exposing vulnerabilities that others can exploit. Ambitious people are likely to pounce on any signs of weakness, and even friends may become resentful if they feel that your success comes at their expense. By maintaining a level of mystery around your objectives, you create a buffer that protects you from others' potential manipulation. Those who can't see your true plans cannot act against you, at least not until it's too late. There's also a psychological element to this law. When you conceal your intentions, you generate a sense of intrigue and curiosity in others. People are drawn to mystery, and this curiosity can be used to your advantage. By keeping others guessing, you not only protect yourself but also create an aura of power. People may start to view you as unpredictable or even more powerful than you really are, which gives you an advantage in negotiations, business dealings, or social interactions. However, Greene also emphasizes that concealing your intentions requires self-discipline. It's easy to let your guard down or accidentally reveal too much when speaking to others. But, when you allow others to see too much of your hand, they can prepare to counter you. Therefore, one of the most important skills to develop is the ability to say just enough to maintain the appearance of openness, while still protecting the core of your strategy. This can be done by being vague or by offering half-truths, which mislead others without creating suspicion. The law also applies in the context of leadership and influence. Leaders often face the temptation to make their plans known in order to gain support from their followers. However, Greene argues that revealing too much can make you vulnerable to opposition. It's better to keep your plans to yourself, or at least only reveal them incrementally, so that followers are kept engaged but never fully aware of the ultimate outcome. This keeps them loyal and attentive, always on their toes and ready to follow your lead without questioning your direction. A critical aspect of this law is also about timing. Concealing your intentions isn't just about keeping secrets for the sake of it, it's about understanding when to reveal certain pieces of information and when to withhold. Timing is crucial. Sometimes, revealing just the right amount of information at the right time can turn the tide in your favor. It can help you gain trust or gain an edge over your rivals. The law teaches us to master the delicate balance of sharing and withholding, using it strategically to gain the upper hand when the moment is right. Greene concludes the chapter by stressing that concealing your intentions is not a form of dishonesty but rather an intelligent, strategic maneuver that protects your position and power. It is a tool to help navigate complex social, political, and professional environments where the less others know, the more freedom you have to maneuver. Secrecy is a form of strength and control, and those who master this law can preserve their power while outsmarting others who may be more transparent or naive in their dealings. Chapter 4: Always Say Less Than Necessary. In Chapter 4 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene explores the power of words and silence, offering the crucial lesson that less is more when it comes to communication. Greene suggests that the less you say, the more powerful you become, especially in high-stakes situations. This law is all about understanding the value of restraint and the dangers of oversharing. By speaking less, you create an air of mystery around you, and people are more likely to respect your words and actions. The power of silence, Greene argues, can be more impactful than any speech or grand statement. Greene opens the chapter with a critical idea: people often speak too much because they feel the need to justify themselves, gain approval, or fill an uncomfortable silence. The more you speak, the more opportunities you give for others to find flaws in your argument or use your words against you. In fact, the more you say, the more likely it is that you'll reveal too much, whether it's information, emotions, or intentions, that can be used to manipulate or undermine you. Silence, on the other hand, commands respect. When you speak less, you appear more in control, calculated, and powerful. People naturally listen more attentively to those who speak less, and they will often assign more meaning to your words, creating a stronger impression. The idea of saying less than necessary ties directly into the concept of mystery. By not revealing everything, you leave room for others to interpret your words and actions. This uncertainty often works in your favor. When you speak too much, you expose your inner thoughts, your plans, and your vulnerabilities. People can take advantage of this. By choosing your words carefully and saying only what is required, you leave people guessing about your true intentions, and that can be an incredible source of power. People who speak little are often seen as more profound, wise, and commanding. Greene gives several historical examples to demonstrate the power of saying less. One famous example is that of King Louis XIV of France, who mastered the art of silence in his court. He was known for being enigmatic and speaking very little, but when he did speak, his words carried immense weight. His ability to say less than necessary made his court come alive with speculation, and his words became something that everyone waited for and took seriously. This strategic silence made him appear more powerful, creating an aura of mystery that people respected and feared. Another striking example is that of Napoleon Bonaparte, who understood the power of brevity in communication. He was famous for issuing orders that were short and to the point. By keeping his messages brief and decisive, Napoleon communicated his authority without needing to explain himself. His followers respected him not only because of his military genius but also because of his ability to say just enough to get the job done. They knew that if Napoleon spoke, it was important, and they learned to listen carefully. In contrast, Greene warns against the dangers of verbosity, particularly when you are trying to gain power or influence. Speaking too much often reveals your weaknesses and allows others to question your authority. The more you talk, the more chances you give for your ideas to be misunderstood or twisted. When you say too much, you also create a sense of uncertainty. Your audience may begin to doubt your ability to lead or your expertise. This can quickly erode your power, as people may start to see you as insecure or unsure of yourself. The law also stresses that saying less than necessary is not about being mute or disengaged. It's about being strategic with your words. When you say little, every word you speak becomes more meaningful and impactful. It's about choosing your moments and knowing when silence will speak louder than any argument or explanation. By withholding unnecessary words, you allow your actions to do the talking, which often has more influence than anything you could say. The less you speak, the more your actions will take center stage and define you. Greene also explains that the less you say, the more you allow others to fill the space with their own thoughts, which can work to your advantage. People often project their ideas and beliefs onto those who remain silent, and this gives you more power over their perceptions. By not giving away too much information, you allow others to interpret your silence and words as they wish. This not only builds intrigue but also places you in a position of control where you can shape others' perceptions in your favor without them realizing it. Additionally, Greene warns that saying less than necessary helps you avoid the danger of getting caught in the heat of the moment. When emotions run high, people often say things they later regret. When you keep your words to a minimum, you avoid making hasty or damaging statements that could undermine your credibility or cause unnecessary conflict. Silence allows you to remain calm and collected, giving you time to think before reacting, which is crucial in moments of high pressure. Lastly, Greene highlights that saying less is often a demonstration of confidence. It shows that you don't feel the need to justify yourself or seek validation. Powerful individuals understand that they don't need to explain themselves to everyone around them. When you speak less, you convey that your actions and your presence speak for you. You trust your judgment and your ability to influence others through your actions, not through constant chatter. Chapter 5. So much depends on reputation, guard it with your life. In Chapter 5 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene explores one of the most critical aspects of power, reputation. Reputation, Greene argues, is everything. It shapes how people perceive you, how much respect they afford you, and how much influence you can wield. Reputation is not just a reflection of your past actions, but a projection of your power in the present and future. It precedes you in every interaction, often influencing others' opinions before you even speak. Because of this, Greene emphasizes the need to guard your reputation fiercely, as losing it can lead to your downfall. The chapter opens with Greene highlighting that a powerful reputation is built over time, but it can be destroyed in an instant. He explains that reputation is one of the most fragile elements in the game of power. Once it's tarnished, it can be almost impossible to rebuild, and the consequences of losing it can be severe. Reputation, in a way, is your shield. It protects you and opens doors that your abilities and skills alone may not be able to. This makes it imperative to manage it carefully. Greene stresses that you must act as though your reputation is the most important thing you own, because, in many ways, it is. Greene uses historical examples to show the lengths to which powerful individuals have gone to protect and enhance their reputations. One example he discusses is the story of the famous 17th-century Italian nobleman, Francesco de' Medici. Francesco was careful about the way he appeared to others. Even in the face of scandals or failure, he worked tirelessly to keep his reputation intact, understanding that any damage to his image could cost him dearly. This story illustrates that in the game of power, appearances often matter more than reality. How others perceive you is everything. It doesn't matter if you're not the best at what you do or if you've made mistakes. What matters is how others view you and whether they see you as a person of power, trustworthiness, and authority. One key part of Greene's argument is that a damaged reputation doesn't just cost you respect, it can also strip you of the ability to influence and control situations. A strong reputation allows you to influence people from behind the scenes, without having to assert your authority overtly. People are often more willing to follow those who have a well-established, positive reputation because they trust that the person will make the right decisions and act with integrity. Conversely, once your reputation is questioned, people start to doubt your judgment, and your influence begins to wane. Greene emphasizes that reputation isn't just about keeping a spotless image, it's about controlling the narrative around you. The key to a powerful reputation is to consistently project the right image, whether you're in the spotlight or working in the background. This means being strategic in how you interact with others, choosing when to reveal vulnerabilities, and making sure that your actions align with the reputation you want to uphold. A well-crafted reputation can elevate you, while a careless reputation can bring you down. Another important aspect of guarding your reputation is knowing how to manage the opinions of those around you. Greene suggests that you must always be aware of how your actions are perceived, especially in public. What you do in private may not matter as much as what others see. For example, if you're caught in a compromising situation, even if it was a minor issue, it can have a disproportionate effect on how people view you. Therefore, Greene advises to always be conscious of your actions and their potential impact on your reputation. Protecting your reputation means thinking several steps ahead and considering how your every move might influence public perception. The chapter also delves into the importance of managing and, at times, exploiting your reputation. Greene suggests that it's not just enough to protect a good reputation, you should actively work to build and enhance it. This can be done by ensuring that people see you as someone with integrity, wisdom, and power. At times, you may need to be proactive in shaping how others perceive you. This could involve carefully crafting your image through your actions, the way you dress, or the way you communicate with others. It's about creating a reputation that speaks for itself, even before you enter the room. Greene provides the example of the infamous Chinese emperor, Zhu Yuanzhang, who had a reputation for cruelty. While his cruelty was real, he used it strategically to instill fear and respect, which ultimately helped him maintain power. By manipulating how others viewed him, he ensured that his reputation remained untouchable, and no one dared to challenge him openly. This is a key element of the law. Reputation is not just about what you have done, but also how you control the stories others tell about you. However, Greene also warns about the dangers of becoming too obsessed with reputation. While it's vital to protect it, you must avoid letting your concern for your image make you paranoid or overly cautious. A reputation that is too carefully crafted or one that is maintained at all costs can also become a trap. Sometimes, you must take risks or make bold moves to ensure that your power remains intact. The law isn't about playing it safe, it's about being strategic, knowing when to speak up, and when to hold your tongue to protect and elevate your reputation. The law concludes with the advice that when your reputation is at risk, you must be proactive in defending it. If someone attacks your reputation or spreads false rumors, you must take action to counteract it immediately. Greene advises using all available means, whether it's exposing the attacker's weaknesses, using your network, or confronting the situation directly, to ensure that your reputation remains intact. By safeguarding your reputation, you maintain your power, credibility, and influence in every situation. Chapter 6, Court Attention at All Costs. In Chapter 6 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene stresses the importance of always being in the spotlight and ensuring that you are the center of attention. He argues that attention is one of the most valuable forms of power in the modern world. People who are noticed, who are visible, and who have others' eyes upon them, hold an undeniable advantage. Whether it's in politics, business, or personal relationships, the power to captivate others' attention is key to gaining influence and control. Greene begins by explaining that in any social, political, or professional environment, there are always people who seek attention, and there are others who try to avoid it. The problem, Greene warns, is that those who avoid attention are often left in the shadows, unnoticed, and overlooked. To be successful and influential, you must position yourself as someone whose presence cannot be ignored. In a world where everyone is vying for attention, being the center of focus can give you the upper hand. But it's not just about being noticed, it's about controlling the way people perceive you. One of the central themes in this chapter is the concept that attention is power. Greene explains that attention can be a form of currency. If you command the attention of others, you control how they think about you and what they expect from you. People who are noticed can influence decisions, shape opinions, and alter the course of events. Conversely, those who remain invisible are left behind, unnoticed, and powerless. The key to this law is that attention must be managed carefully. It's not just about getting attention, but about maintaining it and controlling the narrative. Greene provides historical examples to illustrate how figures throughout history understood the importance of courting attention. One of the most notable examples is that of P.T. Barnum, the famous American showman. Barnum was a master of publicity and attention. He understood that the more people talked about him and his acts, the more powerful he became. He was willing to create spectacle and stir controversy, knowing that the attention he attracted would translate into success. Whether it was through his Museum of Oddities or the promotion of his circus, Barnum knew that any form of attention, even negative attention, could work to his advantage if he controlled the narrative. Another example Greene uses is that of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon was constantly in the public eye, using his personal presence and grandiose actions to captivate the masses. He made sure that his image was constantly reinforced through his actions, speeches, and even the way he dressed. Napoleon understood that for a leader, being at the center of attention wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity. His power grew as a result of his strategic manipulation of the public's perception of him. He used the media, public ceremonies, and even his own image to stay in the public's consciousness, ensuring that people saw him as a larger-than-life figure. Greene also discusses the dangers of being ignored or forgotten. If you are not able to command attention, he warns, you risk being sidelined or ignored entirely. In many cases, when people are ignored, their power erodes away. Being forgotten is one of the worst things that can happen to a person in the world of power, as it means that you no longer have the ability to influence others or control situations. People who are not noticed become irrelevant, and in the game of power, irrelevance can be worse than failure. The law of courting attention also involves understanding the psychology of people. Greene points out that people are naturally drawn to what is unusual, dramatic, or sensational. To stand out, you need to be extraordinary, to do something that others are not expecting. This can involve shocking people, taking bold actions, or even creating controversy. However, Greene also warns that you must carefully calibrate the type of attention you seek. Negative attention, while powerful, can backfire if it damages your reputation or causes lasting harm to your image. The key is to make sure the attention you receive is ultimately beneficial to your goals. One of the most powerful aspects of this law is the idea of staying memorable. Greene explains that attention is not just about being seen, it's about being remembered. People tend to remember those who leave a strong impression, whether through their actions, their words, or their style. If you want to succeed in gaining power, you must find ways to make yourself unforgettable. This could involve mastering your public persona, creating memorable moments, or consistently performing in a way that keeps people coming back for more. The more memorable you are, the more power you will accumulate because people will continue to think of you, discuss you, and rely on you. Greene also explores the concept of controlling the narrative surrounding your attention. In the age of media and social networks, managing the story that others tell about you is crucial. Whether through personal branding, strategic communication, or influencing how others perceive your actions, you must be in control of how your attention is framed. The more you control the narrative, the more power you hold. If you let others define your image, you risk being perceived in a way that doesn't serve your interests. In the final section of the chapter, Greene addresses how you should handle attention when you've attained it. Once you've captured the attention of others, you need to be strategic in how you maintain it. It's not enough to simply receive attention, you must keep it alive and sustain it over time. This requires a delicate balance, avoiding being overly predictable or stale while ensuring that you don't become irrelevant. Those who master the art of courting attention are able to keep their audience engaged, whether through constant novelty, intrigue, or by delivering on their promises in ways that leave people wanting more. Chapter 7: Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. In Chapter 7 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene delves into the importance of delegation, manipulation, and credit in the game of power. The central idea behind this law is that the more you can get others to do the work while you take the credit, the more powerful and influential you will become. By leveraging the efforts of others, you can increase your power without expending excessive energy. However, this law requires finesse, as it's not just about delegating work, but about mastering the art of taking credit for successes without being overtly greedy or selfish. Greene begins the chapter by explaining the principle of using others as tools. He emphasizes that, in the pursuit of power, it is not always necessary to do the heavy lifting yourself. In fact, using other people's energy, resources, and labor is often a much more effective strategy. Throughout history, powerful figures have known that their time is valuable, and by getting others to do the hard work, they can focus on higher-level tasks, such as controlling the outcome, positioning themselves, and reaping the rewards. Delegating effectively means that you can achieve results without overexerting yourself. This law is about control and influence. When you allow others to do the work for you, you not only save time and effort but also keep your hands clean from any potential failure or blame. If things go wrong, it's easy to distance yourself from the failure and protect your reputation. On the other hand, when things go well, you can claim the success as your own, gaining all the credit and admiration. The strategy is to position yourself as the mastermind or leader behind every successful endeavor, even if your actual contribution is minimal. By doing so, you reinforce your authority and power while maintaining a sense of control over the process. A key part of Greene's argument is that you should always take credit where credit is due, even when the work was done by others. This doesn't mean outright lying or taking credit for something you had no part in, but rather, framing your involvement in a way that makes it appear as if you played a larger role than you did. Greene uses historical examples to show how leaders, kings, and influential figures have often taken credit for the success of their subordinates. For instance, he highlights how political leaders frequently have their achievements attributed to them, even if the actual work was carried out by advisors or military leaders. One of the primary benefits of this law is that taking credit elevates your status. When others perceive you as the person responsible for a success, they will look to you as a source of authority, power, and leadership. You build a reputation as someone who is capable of achieving great things and making important decisions. This perception will open doors, create alliances, and grant you more influence. In contrast, if you were to allow others to take the credit, you risk being overshadowed and losing your position of power. Greene stresses that delegation requires careful selection of the right people to do the work. It's important to surround yourself with competent individuals who can get the job done well. However, even as you delegate, you must maintain a sense of control over the process. You need to ensure that the work is done according to your vision and that you can easily step in if necessary. Delegating doesn't mean letting go of responsibility, it means managing others effectively while ensuring that the final outcome aligns with your goals. The chapter also discusses the importance of managing appearances and perceptions. In the pursuit of power, perception often trumps reality. If people believe that you are the driving force behind a successful project, then, in their eyes, you are. By carefully shaping your image and positioning yourself as the person behind every success, you manipulate the narrative in your favor. Greene notes that this principle is not limited to politics or business, it can apply to any field where you want to build influence. Another example that Greene uses to illustrate the power of taking credit is the story of King Louis XIV of France. Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, was a master at getting others to do the work while claiming the glory. His court was filled with talented individuals who worked on various projects and innovations, but Louis positioned himself as the ultimate source of all successes. He built his reputation as an effective and powerful monarch by making sure that every triumph, whether in the arts, sciences, or military, was attributed to his leadership. By doing so, he ensured his place in history as one of the most powerful and respected leaders of his time. Greene also warns about the dangers of doing all the work yourself. He explains that doing too much hands-on work can drain your energy, time, and resources. Moreover, when you take on too much responsibility, you risk being overwhelmed and distracted from the bigger picture. By constantly doing the work yourself, you limit your ability to focus on strategic planning, vision, and long-term goals. A true power player knows how to delegate tasks while maintaining the ability to control the results. Additionally, Greene notes that taking credit can sometimes mean stepping into the spotlight. While delegation often involves working behind the scenes, taking credit may require you to be publicly visible and assertive. You must ensure that your contributions are acknowledged and that the public sees you as the one who made things happen. However, Greene advises that you must be cautious in how you present yourself. Being too overt or boastful can make you appear arrogant or self-serving, which can backfire. Instead, the art of taking credit involves a subtle balance, asserting your influence without appearing to take more than your fair share. One crucial aspect of this law is that it's about building a legacy. When you take credit for others' work, you ensure that your name is attached to the success, which helps to solidify your reputation and influence over time. You become known as a person who consistently produces results, even if you are not directly doing all the work. This can create long-term power that doesn't fade with the completion of a single project or endeavor. Lastly, Greene concludes that while it's essential to get others to do the work for you, it's equally important to recognize the value of collaboration. True power lies not only in taking credit but also in understanding how to work with others and maintain control over the narrative. Successful individuals know when to step in, when to let others shine, and when to take the credit that is rightfully theirs. Chapter 8, Make Other People Come to You, Use Bait if Necessary. In Chapter 8 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene explores a critical principle of power, the power of attraction. He argues that in many situations, it is far more effective to make others come to you, rather than chasing after them. The essence of this law lies in the idea of positioning yourself in a way that others feel compelled to approach you, whether for your wisdom, resources, or leadership. By drawing people to you, you not only gain control over the situation but also enhance your own status and influence. Greene starts the chapter by explaining that power dynamics are not always about direct confrontation or pursuit. In fact, those who constantly chase after others or scramble for attention often appear weak and desperate. On the other hand, those who can position themselves as unattainable or high-value forces create a sense of mystique and attraction. When people are drawn to you, they are more likely to respect you, listen to you, and follow your lead. This tactic is far more subtle and strategic than simply chasing after people to gain their favor. A key concept Greene introduces is the idea of baiting. Sometimes, making others come to you involves setting up a situation where they are motivated to take action. Baiting, however, isn't about tricking or deceiving others, it's about creating an environment where they feel compelled to engage with you, often by playing on their desires, ambitions, or weaknesses. This might involve offering something they want or need, creating an opportunity they can't resist, or even presenting yourself in a way that makes you seem rare and highly valuable. Greene uses several examples from history to demonstrate how powerful individuals have used this law to their advantage. One notable figure he mentions is King Louis XIV of France, who was a master of making others come to him. Louis understood the importance of mystery and allure. Instead of chasing after allies or followers, he created an environment where others sought his approval and patronage. His court was built around the idea of attracting the powerful and influential, ensuring that everyone wanted a piece of his favor. By positioning himself as a figure others had to come to, Louis was able to maintain control over his realm and keep his power firmly in hand. Another historical example Greene uses is the story of the Roman general Fabius Maximus, who, during a critical military conflict, used the tactic of waiting for his enemies to come to him. Fabius understood that by not rushing into battle, he could avoid unnecessary risks and make the enemy exhaust themselves. By taking the more passive position, Fabius not only conserved his strength but also gained a strategic advantage over his opponents. This approach demonstrated that sometimes the best way to win is to force your opponents into a position where they feel they have no choice but to come to you. Greene emphasizes that attraction through bait is not limited to just personal or political power. It's a principle that can be applied in business, relationships, and almost any field where influence is sought. For example, in business, a company that positions itself as the leader in its industry can draw customers, clients, and partners to them. This attraction is often achieved by offering something that others cannot easily replicate or by creating an irresistible value proposition that others are naturally drawn toward. In the chapter, Greene discusses the idea of playing the long game. Making others come to you often involves patience. It's not about making an immediate grab for power or attention but creating a situation where people feel that engaging with you will serve their interests. Whether it's through offering valuable insight, creating a sense of exclusivity, or cultivating a mysterious persona, the goal is to get others to make the first move, ensuring that they come to you on their own terms. One of the most powerful aspects of this law is that it forces others to show their cards. When you make people come to you, they have to present their intentions and motivations. In this way, you gain a clearer understanding of their desires, weaknesses, and goals. This gives you a position of power, as you can make informed decisions based on the information they willingly provide. The more you control the flow of information, the more power you have. Greene also warns that you must never chase after others or appear too eager. People are drawn to those who seem unattainable, confident, and self-sufficient. If you constantly chase after others, whether in business negotiations, relationships, or social situations, you risk coming across as desperate or lacking value. Instead, it is crucial to project an image of strength and independence. Those who seem too available or desperate often push others away or make themselves vulnerable to exploitation. Additionally, Greene points out that baiting must be done with subtlety and care. If you come on too strong or try to manipulate too overtly, the tactic can backfire. The key is to create an environment where others feel that they are making the decision to engage with you, rather than feeling pushed or manipulated. This requires a delicate balance. You must remain mysterious and alluring, but never so distant that others lose interest altogether. The importance of timing is another aspect that Greene underscores in this chapter. Making others come to you requires patience and perfect timing. If you jump too early or too late, the attraction might fizzle out, and the opportunity may pass. The key is to wait for the right moment when your potential allies or rivals are most vulnerable or eager. Timing is everything in ensuring that others are compelled to come to you when it suits your needs. Greene also discusses how having something others want can be used as a form of bait. Whether it's information, resources, or opportunities, the more you can position yourself as a valuable source, the more others will be drawn to you. This is a form of psychological manipulation. When people see you as the gatekeeper to something they desire, they will naturally come to you, often without realizing that they are playing into your hands. Ultimately, making others come to you is about leveraging your position in such a way that others see interacting with you as a necessity or a valuable opportunity. Whether you are building alliances, gaining followers, or seeking to gain influence, the strategy of attraction allows you to preserve your power and control the situation from a position of strength. Chapter 9, Win through your actions, never through argument. In Chapter 9 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene addresses the powerful principle of achieving victory through actions, not through arguments. While many people try to win debates, persuade others through forceful discussion, or prove their superiority through intellectual battles, Greene emphasizes that actions speak louder than words. Arguments, while they may seem like a way to assert dominance or prove a point, are often futile. They can escalate conflicts, damage relationships, and ultimately undermine your authority. Instead, Greene advocates for achieving power and influence through decisive actions that deliver results and speak for themselves. Greene begins by explaining that argumentation is often ineffective. When you argue with someone, you are essentially challenging their beliefs or values, which can provoke resistance. Even if you win the argument, the other party may never truly accept your position. Arguments tend to create enemies and entrenched opposition, leaving a trail of resentment and ill will. In the heat of an argument, emotions can take over, and logic is often lost in the process. People rarely change their minds through arguments, especially when their egos are on the line. The key takeaway from this chapter is that actions are more persuasive than words. While arguments can be draining, inefficient, and counterproductive, a well-executed action can have a much more significant impact. Greene argues that it's better to demonstrate your power and authority through what you do rather than what you say. People are more likely to be impressed by results than by clever rhetoric. When you achieve something meaningful through action, others will recognize your abilities without you needing to argue your case. Your success will speak for itself. A central example in this chapter comes from the story of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon, one of the most legendary military leaders in history, often used his actions to win battles, loyalty, and respect. While other leaders might have relied on lengthy speeches or complex strategies, Napoleon's approach was more direct. He led from the front, engaged in decisive actions, and delivered swift, clear victories. His actions were a demonstration of his power, and his reputation was built on his ability to achieve results. Napoleon knew that true power comes from demonstrating competence and effectiveness through action, not from engaging in lengthy verbal battles. Greene highlights that words can often be a distraction. In many situations, people use arguments to avoid taking real action. Argumentation can be a way of masking insecurity or avoiding responsibility. People who argue endlessly often do so because they lack the ability to follow through with concrete actions. In contrast, those who take action are typically seen as confident and competent, regardless of what they say. Greene emphasizes that you should avoid being drawn into pointless arguments that serve no purpose and only waste your time and energy. Greene also explains that actions create a stronger, more lasting impression than words. People can forget speeches, debates, or arguments, but they rarely forget the outcomes of meaningful actions. If you accomplish something significant, whether it's a successful business deal, a military conquest, or an innovative idea, people will remember what you did, not what you said. In contrast, a victory achieved through argument may fade from memory or be seen as hollow, especially if the other party feels humiliated or resentful. An important aspect of this law is the idea of leading by example. Instead of arguing about your principles or beliefs, Greene suggests that you should live by them. If you want others to adopt a certain mindset or approach, show them through your actions how it works. People are more likely to follow your lead if they see the practical benefits of your actions rather than being persuaded by your words. By setting an example, you naturally influence others without having to force the issue through debate. One of the key dangers of argumentation, according to Greene, is that it invites opposition and conflict. When you argue, you make your beliefs and intentions known, which often invites others to challenge you. This can lead to resentment, anger, and a defensive attitude. Furthermore, if you're engaging in an argument with someone more powerful or influential, you risk putting yourself in a vulnerable position. Arguing can often escalate tensions and lead to an unnecessary confrontation that harms your reputation or power. Greene advises that instead of arguing, you should focus on mastering your craft and proving your worth through your actions. When people see that you are skilled, capable, and competent, they are less likely to question you. Actions have a lasting effect that can't be easily refuted. It's also important to be strategic in your actions, ensuring that you're always moving toward your goals and not being distracted by trivial disputes. The best way to avoid arguments is to focus on what really matters and let your results speak for themselves. Greene also delves into the psychology of argument. When people argue, they often feel that their egos are at stake. The more you engage in arguments, the more you risk triggering defensive mechanisms in others. People don't like to be wrong, and when they feel that they are losing an argument, they may dig in their heels, making it difficult to reach any resolution. The best way to avoid this situation is to bypass arguments altogether and let your actions show the validity of your point. Avoiding the need to argue is also tied to the concept of power dynamics. When you don't need to argue, you are in a position of strength. Those who rely on arguments often appear weak or uncertain, as they are seeking validation and approval from others. On the other hand, when you act decisively and competently, you convey that you don't need anyone's approval. You are in control of the situation, and your actions communicate your strength, confidence, and capability. The chapter also offers insights into how to deal with others who rely on arguments. Greene suggests that you should never let yourself be pulled into fruitless debates with people who are determined to argue. Instead, focus on maintaining your composure and confidence. When someone tries to draw you into an argument, you can either disengage or use your actions to show them the results of your approach. By remaining calm and focused on your goals, you demonstrate that you are above petty disputes and are more concerned with achieving real success. Another important lesson from this chapter is that actions often have a greater impact than words, especially in leadership roles. A leader who argues constantly undermines their authority, as they appear unsure of themselves. On the other hand, a leader who takes action and gets results inspires loyalty and respect. People are naturally drawn to those who can deliver, and they are far less likely to challenge someone who consistently demonstrates their competence through their actions. Ultimately, Greene's message in Chapter 9 is clear: actions should be the primary tool in your quest for power. Rather than arguing, focus on creating tangible results that speak for themselves. The most powerful people in history have often been those who let their actions do the talking, leaving others to marvel at their achievements. By focusing on your actions, you can avoid unnecessary conflict, build respect, and achieve your goals with far less effort and risk than engaging in verbal battles. Chapter 10, Infection: Avoid the Unhappy and Unlucky. In Chapter 10 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene explores the concept of emotional infection and the danger of associating with those who are unlucky or perpetually unhappy. Greene's argument centers around the idea that negative emotions, failure, and misfortune are contagious, and by associating with those who are surrounded by these things, you risk being tainted by their bad luck or pessimism. This chapter is a reminder of the power of your environment and the people you surround yourself with, and how they can either elevate you or bring you down. Greene begins the chapter by describing how unhappiness and misfortune can spread. Just as a happy and successful person can lift the spirits of those around them, the opposite is true as well. When you spend time with people who are consistently negative, bitter, or unlucky, their emotional states and attitudes begin to rub off on you. Even if you are initially strong and positive, prolonged exposure to negativity can weaken your resolve, dim your optimism, and cloud your judgment. People who are always in a bad mood or constantly experiencing misfortune are not only draining but can also slow your progress toward your own goals. One of the core ideas in this chapter is the importance of choosing your companions wisely. Greene argues that, as much as possible, you should avoid people who bring a sense of negativity or despair into your life. Whether it's someone who always complains, someone who is perpetually down on their luck, or someone who fails to take responsibility for their problems, these types of people can subtly, or even overtly, affect your mindset. If you want to succeed and maintain a positive, productive outlook, it's essential to surround yourself with people who inspire and elevate you. Greene uses historical examples to illustrate the power of emotional infection. One example he gives is the case of King Louis XVI of France and his association with the ill fortune of the French monarchy. Louis XVI's reign was marked by constant financial trouble, political unrest, and the growing dissatisfaction of the French populace. The king's inability to address these issues, along with his weak leadership, created an aura of doom and helplessness around the monarchy. The bad luck of the king and his court infected the entire nation, culminating in the French Revolution. Another example that Greene discusses is the downfall of General George Custer. Before his infamous defeat at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Custer was known for his overconfidence and reckless behavior. He surrounded himself with people who were just as brash and overly self-assured as he was. In turn, this created an environment where caution and careful decision-making were discarded. His decisions and his eventual downfall were an example of how surrounding yourself with people who reinforce poor habits can lead to disaster. In this chapter, Greene also emphasizes the psychological impact of being around negative people. People who are unhappy, unlucky, or constantly mired in personal failures often view the world through a pessimistic lens. They are quick to point out risks, highlight obstacles, and bring others down with their negative perspective. This can be particularly toxic if you are trying to remain optimistic and work toward your own goals. Over time, if you constantly hear negativity, it can begin to affect how you see the world as well. Negative individuals also tend to attract others who share their mindset, forming a group dynamic of despair that can drag down anyone who enters the fold. Greene advises that it's crucial to be selective with the people you allow into your life. He suggests that you should associate with those who are positive, capable of inspiring you, and who have a track record of success. These people will help you focus on possibilities rather than limitations. The energy of successful, driven individuals is contagious, and their mindset will help you maintain focus on your own ambitions. By surrounding yourself with optimistic, powerful people, you align yourself with success, and their energy will infuse you with motivation and determination. Greene also warns against the temptation to help or rescue people who are always in need of saving. While it's natural to feel empathy for those who are struggling, the chapter highlights the importance of recognizing when someone's situation is beyond help or when their misfortune is a result of their own actions or attitudes. Trying to save someone who is consistently unlucky or unhappy can drain your resources, waste your time, and pull you away from your own goals. It's vital to understand that, in some cases, you may not be able to help someone who isn't willing to help themselves. This is a hard truth, but by distancing yourself from individuals who refuse to take responsibility for their lives, you free yourself to pursue your own success. One of the most profound messages in this chapter is that you must guard your emotional well-being as carefully as you guard your physical health. Just as you would avoid spending time in an unhealthy environment that could make you sick, you must also avoid emotional environments that can infect your mindset. Greene stresses that emotions are highly contagious, and if you are regularly exposed to negative or unlucky people, their emotional state will begin to affect your own. In the same way, spending time with successful, optimistic individuals can lift your spirits and push you toward greatness. Greene also talks about how misfortune can be self-perpetuating. People who are unlucky often create their own bad luck through their attitudes or actions. They may consistently make poor decisions, fail to learn from their mistakes, or exhibit a defeatist mentality. This self-perpetuating cycle of misfortune can be incredibly draining to be around. If you consistently find yourself surrounded by such individuals, you risk being dragged into their cycle of negativity and failure. Finally, Greene makes the point that emotional infection can spread even in subtle ways. It's not always about direct contact with negative people, it can be through indirect influences, such as observing their behavior, hearing their complaints, or feeling the weight of their failures. The mere presence of someone who is unlucky or unhappy can create a toxic environment that affects everyone in the vicinity. This is why it's so crucial to actively choose who you spend your time with and ensure that your relationships support your growth and success. Chapter 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. In Chapter 11 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene delves into a critical aspect of gaining and maintaining power, making others dependent on you. This chapter focuses on the strategic value of creating relationships in which others rely on your skills, resources, or influence. By making people need you, you create a position of power that is difficult to challenge. Greene emphasizes that true power comes from being indispensable. When people are dependent on you, they have no choice but to respect and support you. Greene begins by explaining that, in order to gain control, you must create a sense of dependency in others. Whether it's through your unique skills, knowledge, resources, or position, the key is to make others realize that they cannot succeed without you. When people rely on you for their success or well-being, they become vulnerable to your influence. This dependency is a form of leverage that can be used to shape their actions and decisions. It is not about coercion or force but about offering something valuable that others need. One example that Greene uses to illustrate this concept is the relationship between Richelieu and King Louis XIII of France. Richelieu, the chief minister of France, was able to maintain his power and influence by making the king dependent on him. He had unique political skills and knowledge, and by positioning himself as indispensable to the king's rule, Richelieu secured his position at court. As long as the king needed Richelieu to maintain order and control in France, Richelieu remained untouchable. This example demonstrates the effectiveness of creating a bond of dependency to strengthen your position of power. Greene argues that the best way to make someone dependent on you is to offer something they cannot easily obtain elsewhere. Whether it is knowledge, access, or a special skill, your value must be something unique. If others can easily replace you or find what you offer elsewhere, then they will have no reason to stay reliant on you. The more you can cultivate a monopoly on something valuable, the more control you will have. It could be expertise, unique resources, or even a position of authority. By controlling something essential to others, you secure your place in their lives. A central idea in this chapter is creating a sense of scarcity. Greene suggests that in order to maintain power, you should limit access to your services or influence. If people believe they can always turn to you for help or advice, they may take you for granted or feel that they can operate without you. However, by being selective and occasionally withholding your support, you increase your perceived value. When others believe that they cannot always rely on you, they will be more likely to seek you out and depend on you more heavily. Scarcity, in this case, does not mean being unhelpful, but rather strategically limiting your availability so that you remain in high demand. Greene also explores the psychology behind dependency. He explains that people who are dependent on you will feel a sense of indebtedness. This sense of indebtedness can create a powerful bond, as they are likely to feel compelled to support you, follow your lead, and show loyalty in return for the value you provide. This sense of reliance can also make others more vulnerable to your influence, as they begin to recognize that their success is tied to your support. Greene compares this dependency to a kind of emotional leverage, where the other person feels they owe you something, and that debt influences their behavior. In this chapter, Greene also emphasizes the importance of avoiding the perception of independence. If people perceive you as self-sufficient or independent, they may start to distance themselves from you or feel that they have no use for your services. By fostering dependency, you ensure that others are constantly seeking your involvement. This is not about becoming a servant or subservient to others, but rather positioning yourself as an irreplaceable force in their lives. The more they need you, the more power you hold. Greene further explains that those who can't be replaced are in a position to influence and control. The key is to develop skills, traits, or resources that others cannot easily replicate. The more unique and valuable your contribution, the stronger the dependency becomes. If people cannot find anyone else who can do what you do, they will have no choice but to keep you close and dependent on your input. It is this monopoly on influence that ensures your position of power. However, Greene warns that dependency should be managed carefully. If you make people too dependent on you, they may begin to resent you for controlling their success. Dependency can become uncomfortable for both parties if it turns into a situation where the other person feels trapped or powerless. Greene advises creating dependency that is mutually beneficial. You gain power by being indispensable, and the other person gains value through your influence or contribution. It is about balancing power so that dependency does not become stifling or resentful. Another key point that Greene addresses is that dependency can also be used to create competition. By encouraging others to rely on you, you can foster an environment where people are competing for your attention, resources, or support. This dynamic can be used to enhance your own power, as people will vie for your favor and loyalty. This form of strategic competition can be used to push others to perform better, work harder, or offer more value to you in exchange for your continued support. As with many of the principles in the 48 Laws of Power, Greene underscores the importance of long-term strategy. Creating dependency is not something that can be accomplished overnight. It takes time, patience, and careful manipulation. You must build trust, prove your worth, and maintain a sense of scarcity and exclusivity. Over time, as the dependency deepens, your position becomes more secure, and the power dynamic shifts in your favor. Finally, Greene discusses the importance of reassessing dependencies over time. While creating dependency is a powerful tool, it is essential to remain aware of when that dependency begins to shift or weaken. As circumstances change, so too might the dynamics of your relationships. You must be prepared to adjust your strategies to maintain power and continue fostering dependency in a way that benefits you. Chapter 12: Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. In Chapter 12 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene delves into the concept of selective honesty and generosity, arguing that these tools can be incredibly powerful when used strategically. The chapter focuses on how honesty and generosity, when used sparingly and in the right context, can disarm and manipulate others, making them more vulnerable to your influence. Greene explains that people are naturally inclined to trust those who show vulnerability or act selflessly, but by being careful with when and how you use these traits, you can turn them into tools for gaining power. Greene begins by explaining that, although honesty and generosity are generally seen as virtues, they can also be weaponized to manipulate others. People have a tendency to trust those who appear sincere or who act in a selfless manner. This instinct is based on the human need to find alliances and form bonds. However, Greene points out that the strategic use of honesty and generosity is not about being consistently virtuous, but rather using these qualities at key moments to create trust and disarm your opponents. One example that Greene uses to illustrate this concept is the story of Catherine de Braganza, the Queen of England, and her interactions with her husband, King Charles II. Catherine, who was from Portugal, used her generosity and honesty to win over her husband and others at court. She often gave gifts, listened attentively, and appeared to be selfless. However, beneath this generosity was a strategic use of her image. By creating an aura of goodwill, Catherine was able to gain the trust of the king, while subtly manipulating him for her own benefit. The core of Greene's argument is that selective honesty is not about constant truth-telling, but about using it strategically. Greene suggests that one well-placed truth, whether it's a confession, an admission of vulnerability, or a revealing statement, can break down the walls of suspicion and make you appear more trustworthy. People are naturally inclined to believe someone who shows a rare moment of honesty, especially in a situation where it seems like they would have something to lose by revealing the truth. By being selective with your honesty, you can catch others off guard and gain their trust in a way that can be used to manipulate them. Greene emphasizes that this tactic works because people are trained to see honesty as a sign of good character, making it a powerful tool in disarming potential opponents or critics. When you present yourself as honest, others lower their defenses, often without realizing it. They may believe that your vulnerability is a sign of weakness, but in reality, it is a tactic that allows you to operate with greater freedom. Greene compares this to a magician's sleight of hand, where a well-timed, honest moment distracts from the true nature of the situation, allowing you to manipulate the outcome without suspicion. In addition to selective honesty, Greene discusses generosity as a form of disarming influence. Generosity, when used strategically, can make others feel indebted to you and can create a sense of loyalty. Greene argues that people are naturally inclined to return favors, and by being generous at the right moment, you can make others feel compelled to support you in return. This generosity does not need to be grand or expensive. It can simply be a kind gesture or offering of help that makes the other person feel obligated to reciprocate. This sense of obligation becomes a tool you can use to control and influence them. Greene also addresses the idea of appearing selfless and how this can be used to create an illusion of weakness in your opponent. When you give generously without expecting anything in return, it confuses people and makes them think that you are not a threat. However, this generosity can be used as a strategic move to manipulate the other person into a vulnerable position, where they feel they owe you something. By creating a sense of indebtedness, you position yourself as a figure who can be trusted, but also one who can extract favors or cooperation when necessary. Throughout the chapter, Greene highlights the importance of timing when using selective honesty and generosity. These tactics must be deployed at the right moment, when they will have the greatest impact. For instance, if you are trying to gain someone's trust or lower their defenses, showing a moment of vulnerability or giving a small gift at just the right time can completely change the dynamic of the relationship. Greene warns that if these tactics are overused or come across as manipulative, they can backfire and make you appear insincere or self-serving. The key is to use these tools sparingly, creating just the right amount of trust and goodwill to influence others without tipping your hand. Greene also uses historical examples to illustrate how selective honesty and generosity have been employed by powerful individuals throughout history. For instance, he cites the example of Cardinal Richelieu, who used the appearance of generosity and honesty to disarm his rivals. Richelieu would often offer his opponents seemingly selfless gestures, such as sharing important information or offering support, only to later use these actions as leverage when it was most advantageous. By cultivating the appearance of sincerity, Richelieu was able to gain the trust of those around him, while subtly maneuvering them into positions of dependency. In addition to Richelieu, Greene mentions the story of Louis XIV of France and his strategic use of generosity to solidify his control over the French nobility. Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, would often shower his nobles with gifts and rewards to keep them loyal. However, this generosity was always given with the understanding that it would create a debt that the recipients would be expected to repay. By positioning himself as both a benefactor and a ruler, Louis XIV was able to maintain power over the nobility and ensure their loyalty. The psychology of disarming through honesty and generosity. The psychological aspect of selective honesty and generosity is a crucial part of Greene's argument. People are inherently social beings who seek connection and validation, and one of the quickest ways to build a rapport is through honesty and selflessness. However, Greene notes that people rarely question the motives of someone who is being generous or honest. This lack of skepticism makes these qualities powerful tools in creating a facade of goodwill, even when the true intention is manipulation. One of the more subtle aspects of the tactic is how it works to create a sense of emotional indebtedness. When you give someone something they need or offer them a glimpse of truth, they often feel an emotional obligation to return the favor or act in kind. This creates a psychological bond that can be leveraged for power. The beauty of this tactic is that it's not about forcing others to do something but rather about indirectly guiding them through their own feelings of obligation and trust. Greene also underscores the importance of using honesty and generosity selectively in maintaining a long-term advantage. If you are too open with your emotions or too generous, you risk losing the upper hand. Excessive displays of honesty or generosity can make you appear weak or manipulative, undermining the power you are trying to create. The trick, therefore, is to use these tools in moderation, just enough to foster trust, disarm your opponent, and set the stage for future influence. Chapter 13, When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. In Chapter 13 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene teaches one of the most critical lessons in navigating human relationships and gaining influence: appeal to people's self-interest when asking for help. The chapter explains that asking for favors based on mercy, gratitude, or emotional appeals often leads to disappointment, while appealing to someone's self-interest increases the likelihood of success. This law is about understanding human nature and recognizing that, in most cases, people are motivated by what they can gain from a situation, not by compassion or goodwill alone. Greene opens the chapter by asserting that human nature is driven by self-interest. Whether in politics, business, or personal relationships, people are more inclined to act when they see how it benefits them. When you ask for help, you are much more likely to receive a positive response if you frame your request in a way that appeals to the other person's needs, desires, or goals. If you can make them see how helping you will ultimately benefit them, they are much more likely to oblige. One of the key ideas that Greene explores is the importance of understanding the other person's desires. To make your request persuasive, you must first understand what motivates the person you are asking for help. What do they care about? What do they need? If you can align your request with their self-interest, it becomes more attractive. This is not about manipulating people, but rather aligning your goals with theirs. Greene uses the example of a king who was able to secure the loyalty of his nobles by framing his requests for assistance in a way that benefited the nobles' own ambitions. The king recognized that if he could offer the nobles a way to achieve their personal goals, they would be more than willing to support him. Greene argues that appealing to self-interest is far more effective than appealing to someone's sense of mercy, gratitude, or charity. People are much more likely to ignore or reject an appeal based on emotional need, as it does not offer them any personal gain. When you ask for help from someone, especially from a position of weakness, relying on mercy or gratitude is a dangerous strategy. It places you in a position of vulnerability, and the person you are asking may feel reluctant to help because they do not perceive any benefit to themselves. Appealing to their self-interest, however, makes your request more compelling because it shows how helping you can also help them in some way. Greene provides historical examples to highlight this principle. One of the most notable is the story of King Louis XI of France, who was skilled at understanding the self-interests of others. He would often make requests of his nobles, but he always framed them in terms of how they would benefit. He understood that nobles were driven by a desire for power, status, and wealth, so he would offer them tangible rewards in exchange for their loyalty and support. By appealing to their self-interest, Louis XI was able to manipulate the nobles into doing his bidding without them realizing they were being used. The chapter also emphasizes that even if you are in a position of power, appealing to others' self-interest is still necessary. Leaders, kings, and powerful individuals are constantly seeking the loyalty and support of those around them. In order to maintain power, these individuals must recognize that their own success is tied to the needs and desires of others. By offering something of value to those around them, they create a network of loyal allies who will act in their best interests. This mutual exchange of favors and benefits creates a system of interdependence, where everyone involved has something to gain. Greene also discusses the importance of being indirect in your appeal. Directly asking for help can often be perceived as a demand or an imposition, which can trigger resistance. Instead, Greene advises that you should frame your request in a way that makes it seem as though helping you is in the other person's best interest. Rather than saying, "I need your help," you could say, "I believe you are the best person to assist me with this, and I'm sure this will benefit you in the long run." This indirect approach allows the other person to feel as though they are making their own decision, rather than feeling coerced or manipulated. Additionally, Greene warns against the common pitfall of appealing to guilt or obligation. People who are made to feel guilty or pressured into helping may comply in the short term, but they will often resent it. This resentment can sour the relationship and lead to future conflicts. In contrast, when you appeal to someone's self-interest, they are more likely to feel positive about helping, as they perceive it as a mutually beneficial action. Greene also touches on the concept of reciprocity. When you do something for someone, they often feel the desire to return the favor. By framing your request in a way that shows how you have already helped the other person, you can trigger the principle of reciprocity. For example, if you have offered assistance in the past or done something for them, they may feel compelled to help you in return. This creates a sense of mutual exchange, which is more sustainable and beneficial in the long run than relying on a one-time emotional appeal. Another important point Greene makes is that people are more likely to help you when they believe you have something to offer in return. Even if you do not have a direct favor to offer, the idea of future benefit can be enough to encourage someone to help. If you can show that helping you now will lead to a larger payoff down the line, people will be more willing to act. This is why many successful leaders and entrepreneurs are adept at creating a sense of long-term value in their relationships. They know that the more they align their actions with others' self-interest, the more loyalty and support they will receive. Greene wraps up the chapter by emphasizing that self-interest is universal. Everyone has their own needs, desires, and goals, and by recognizing and understanding these factors, you can position yourself in a way that appeals to others' motivations. Whether in business or personal relationships, appealing to self-interest is a critical skill that helps you gain allies, maintain power, and achieve success. Chapter 14, Pose as a Friend, Work as a Spy. In Chapter 14 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene explores the delicate art of gathering information, which is often key to maintaining and increasing power. The central idea of this law is to disguise your true intentions by posing as a friend while secretly gathering intelligence about those around you. Greene emphasizes that information is power, and knowing what others are thinking, planning, or feeling can give you a significant edge in any situation, be it in business, politics, or personal relationships. Greene begins by explaining that people tend to let their guard down when they believe someone is a friend. This is because we have an inherent trust in those we perceive as allies. When you present yourself as a friend, others will be more open, sharing their plans, desires, and even weaknesses, not realizing that you are using this information for your own strategic advantage. This can be incredibly valuable, especially in competitive environments, where gaining insights into your rivals can help you outmaneuver them. The first lesson in this chapter is how to build trust without revealing your true motivations. Greene suggests that in order to gather information effectively, you must avoid appearing like a spy or someone with ulterior motives. You must create an appearance of friendship and camaraderie so that people feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and secrets with you. The key here is to act as though you are genuinely interested in them and their well-being, even if you are only focused on extracting information. One of the dangers of being too obvious in your quest for information is that people can sense when they are being manipulated. If your actions are too transparent, your targets may become suspicious, causing them to close off and protect themselves from you. Greene explains that you must be subtle in your approach. By presenting yourself as a friendly, non-threatening figure, people will often underestimate your ability to gather information and use it against them. The element of surprise is crucial to the success of this tactic. Greene highlights historical figures who excelled at using this law to their advantage. One of the most prominent examples is Cardinal Richelieu, who was a master at gathering intelligence. Richelieu posed as a loyal advisor to King Louis XIII, while secretly collecting information about the king's court. Through his carefully cultivated relationships with key individuals, he was able to manipulate events to his benefit. Richelieu's ability to collect information through seemingly innocent conversations and interactions made him one of the most powerful figures in France, despite being in a relatively low position initially. Another example Greene provides is Queen Elizabeth I of England. Elizabeth used spies and informants to gather information from her court and foreign governments, all while maintaining an image of being a gracious and trustworthy ruler. She often disguised her true motives and intentions, acting as a benevolent leader while using intelligence to stay ahead of her enemies. Her ability to pose as a friend while secretly working as a spy allowed her to maintain power and navigate the political landscape effectively. The psychology of posing as a friend. One of the key insights that Greene offers in this chapter is about human nature. People are generally social creatures who desire connection, validation, and support. When you present yourself as a friend, you play into these natural tendencies. By offering a listening ear, showing empathy, and being supportive, you can create a bond with others that makes them more likely to confide in you. This trust allows you to gather invaluable information, which you can later use to manipulate or control situations in your favor. Greene also delves into the psychological benefits of acting as a friend while secretly spying. People often believe that their friends have their best interests at heart, and as a result, they let their guards down. They might reveal their deepest thoughts, fears, and plans, thinking that they are speaking in confidence. However, by pretending to be a friend, you can subtly extract this information while keeping your own motives hidden. Over time, this can give you a powerful advantage because you are essentially reading the playbook of those around you. One of the risks of using this tactic is that people may eventually sense that you are not being completely genuine. This is where Greene advises caution. While it is important to gain information, you must be careful not to cross the line from friendly to overly intrusive or manipulative. If you push too hard or show too much interest in certain subjects, your target may become uncomfortable or suspicious. The art of posing as a friend is about creating a fine balance between being genuinely approachable and maintaining a hidden agenda. Building trust and gathering information. To be effective at posing as a friend and working as a spy, Greene offers several strategies. One of the most important strategies is asking the right questions. Instead of coming right out and asking for specific information, you should engage people in casual conversations that allow them to reveal details without feeling like they are being interrogated. This could be as simple as asking about their plans for the future, their opinions on certain topics, or their thoughts on specific people. By asking open-ended questions, you can gain insights into their thoughts and intentions. Another important tactic Greene mentions is making people feel important. When you show genuine interest in someone's ideas, experiences, and feelings, you encourage them to open up to you. People often enjoy talking about themselves, and by being a good listener and providing validation, you can establish a strong rapport. This creates a relationship where the other person feels comfortable enough to share personal information, believing that they are simply engaging with a friendly, non-threatening individual. Using information for power. The true power of this law lies in how you use the information you gather. Once you have accumulated valuable insights about someone's weaknesses, desires, or future plans, you are in a position to manipulate events to your advantage. For instance, if you learn that someone is afraid of losing their position of power, you could use this knowledge to influence their decisions or create situations that pressure them into acting in your favor. Greene also emphasizes that using the information strategically is crucial. Having knowledge is one thing, but knowing how to use it is what separates successful manipulators from those who fail. Timing is key. Releasing the information at the right moment can create leverage that forces others to act according to your wishes. Whether it is through subtle persuasion, creating doubt, or outright blackmail, the information you gather while posing as a friend can be used to shape outcomes to your benefit. The dangers of overplaying your hand. While this tactic can be incredibly effective, Greene also cautions that it comes with inherent risks. If your intentions are discovered or if you are caught spying, the consequences can be severe. People value trust and loyalty, and if they feel betrayed or manipulated, they may turn against you. Being too obvious in your attempts to gather information or crossing boundaries by prying too deeply can lead to loss of credibility and alienation from those you are trying to influence. The key to success with this law is to remain discreet. You must always be mindful of the line between gathering valuable information and appearing overly invasive. Maintaining a friendly, approachable demeanor while keeping your true motives hidden is an art that requires practice and finesse. Chapter 15, Crush Your Enemy Totally. In Chapter 15 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene explores one of the most controversial and provocative strategies for gaining power: crushing your enemy totally. The idea presented is simple yet ruthless. When you have an opponent who threatens your position, your power, or your future, you must not leave any room for retaliation or escape. Leave no options for them to recover, regroup, or retaliate. This law suggests that complete domination is the only way to ensure lasting security and peace, without any lingering threats. Greene begins by illustrating that victory over an enemy is not complete until the enemy is thoroughly defeated. If you leave any trace of power, influence, or resources for your enemy, you are merely setting the stage for future challenges. History is filled with examples of leaders who, once they achieved power over their rivals, made the mistake of underestimating the possibility of retaliation. Incomplete victories lead to the risk of future conflict, and this law emphasizes that complete annihilation of your opponent is necessary for absolute power. One example Greene uses to demonstrate this law is Catherine the Great of Russia. She was faced with multiple threats during her rise to power, including a coup led by her own husband. When she seized the throne, she did not simply remove the immediate threat, she completely dismantled any possibility of the coup's success by destroying the very foundations of her enemy's power. She ensured that those who had once conspired against her would never be in a position to harm her again. She did not just imprison or exile them, she eradicated their influence entirely, making any return impossible. Greene emphasizes that there are two ways to defeat an enemy: total annihilation or strategic disempowerment. He advocates for the former, explaining that half measures are ultimately self-defeating. The common mistake in any conflict, Greene asserts, is to believe that letting your enemy live will ensure a future peaceful coexistence. In reality, an enemy left intact will often seek revenge or at least continue to undermine your position. As long as they have any remaining power, they are a danger to your control. The law also discusses the psychological aspect of this strategy. Crushing your enemy totally sends a message to everyone around you, not just your immediate rival. It creates an aura of invincibility, and others will begin to fear your power and might. Fear is a powerful tool for maintaining dominance, and when your enemies see that you have the ability and the ruthlessness to eliminate any potential threats, they will be more likely to submit or avoid conflict altogether. Greene explains that power is often a matter of perception, and by leaving no trace of an enemy, you enhance your reputation and create an atmosphere of complete authority. A historical example Greene uses to highlight the principle of total destruction is Napoleon Bonaparte's approach to his enemies. Napoleon's military strategies were built around decisive battles that left no room for his enemies to recover. Once he defeated an opponent, he ensured that their forces were destroyed, their resources confiscated, and their leadership utterly crippled. Napoleon understood that in war, there is no middle ground. If you fail to crush your enemy completely, you risk giving them the opportunity to rise again and challenge your position. Greene also delves into the idea of psychological warfare. When you completely crush an enemy, you not only eliminate their physical power but also destroy their will to fight. He suggests that the most effective way to neutralize an enemy is to break their spirit first, rendering them incapable of continuing the fight. The mere perception of total destruction, whether through propaganda, fear, or direct action, can demoralize even the most resilient individuals. This demoralization creates a situation where the enemy no longer believes they can win, which makes their ultimate defeat much more achievable. However, Greene does not suggest that total annihilation should always be the first choice. He acknowledges that sometimes a more measured approach is necessary. The key to successfully implementing this law is knowing when the time is right to completely eliminate an opponent. Timing is critical. Attacking your enemy too early or too aggressively could backfire, especially if they have allies or resources that you have not yet accounted for. Patience and strategic planning are essential components of the execution of this law. The law also warns against the danger of leaving any remnants of your enemy's power. Even the smallest spark of hope for your enemy can lead to their resurgence. Greene shares the example of Julius Caesar, who faced many threats during his rise to power. After defeating his enemies, he took great care to ensure that there were no potential leaders left to challenge his rule. He even had to neutralize the remaining factions within his own ranks to make sure that there was no possibility of rebellion. This thoroughness ensured that he did not just win in the moment but secured his empire for the long term. Another point Greene makes is that once your enemy is crushed, you must follow through. There is no turning back from total destruction. If you hesitate, show mercy, or leave any remnants of your enemy's power, you risk exposing yourself to future threats. This is not to say that you should be needlessly cruel, but completeness in victory is paramount. In some cases, this may involve making examples of your defeated enemies, publicly displaying their fall from power to solidify your dominance and intimidate others. Greene also touches upon the moral implications of this law. While many readers may be uncomfortable with the idea of completely crushing their enemies, he points out that in the pursuit of power, these decisions are not always about morality, they are about survival and dominance. In the world of power dynamics, there are often no middle grounds. A half-victory can lead to long-term instability, so it is essential to commit fully to eliminating threats when the opportunity arises. The importance of complete victory. Ultimately, Greene argues that only through total destruction can you ensure long-lasting peace and security. This law isn't just about physical defeat, it's about completely wiping out any potential for future challenges. The total defeat of your enemy sends a message of strength and decisiveness, which can prevent others from attempting to test your power. Once your enemies are no longer a factor, your rule becomes unassailable, and you can enjoy the fruits of your victory without the constant threat of retaliation. Greene concludes the chapter by reiterating that in the pursuit of power, there is no room for mercy. In war, business, or personal conflicts, if you fail to crush your enemies completely, you risk giving them a second chance to rise up. The law of total destruction ensures that your enemies never have the opportunity to harm you again. By showing no weakness, you not only secure your position but also create a reputation for being invincible, which becomes one of your most powerful tools for maintaining power. Chapter 16, Use Absence to Increase Respect and Honor. In Chapter 16 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene presents a powerful and strategic concept: use absence to increase respect and honor. At first glance, this may seem counterintuitive, as we often associate visibility with power. However, Greene argues that being present too much can diminish your value, while strategically using absence can elevate your status and create an aura of mystery and desirability. This law teaches how to use the principle of scarcity, the idea that things become more valuable when they are less available. Greene begins by explaining that in the world of power dynamics, people tend to take things for granted when they are abundant or overly accessible. Constant presence can cause others to grow accustomed to your availability, and over time, they may begin to undervalue you or take you for granted. Whether in business, personal relationships, or in the political sphere, the more you are seen, the less desirable or special you may appear. People may start to lose respect for you, not because you lack worth, but because they've grown used to you being available at all times. The key principle here is scarcity. Greene explains that absence creates a sense of longing. When you withdraw from a situation or a relationship, it forces others to realize your value in your absence. This tactic plays into the human tendency to appreciate things more when they are no longer easily accessible. When you take a step back, people begin to miss your presence, and their respect and admiration for you often increase as a result. One of the core ideas Greene explores is that absence creates intrigue. When you are constantly available and present, there's little mystery about who you are or what you bring to the table. However, when you step back, people begin to wonder about you. They start asking questions like, "Where have they gone?" or "What are they up to?" This curiosity, Greene argues, is the first step toward increasing your influence and respect. By carefully managing your presence, you can create an environment where people view you as valuable, enigmatic, and even indispensable. Greene shares the example of Napoleon Bonaparte, who understood the power of strategic absence. During his time in power, Napoleon was often invisible to his enemies and even to his allies. He would withdraw from the public eye at crucial moments, creating a sense of mystery and power around his persona. His absence would make others wonder what he was thinking, planning, or preparing for. This strategy kept people on edge and elevated his status as a figure whose presence was always impactful, even if he was not physically present. Another example that Greene discusses is Queen Elizabeth I of England, who understood the importance of making herself scarce to maintain her power. At times, she would retreat into her palace and limit her public appearances, creating an air of exclusivity around her. By doing so, she ensured that people could not take her for granted, and her absence made her even more desirable and important in the eyes of her court and her people. When she finally made appearances, they were charged with a sense of great significance, and her absence had heightened the expectation and respect surrounding her. Greene also points out that absence can give you time to recharge and prepare for future endeavors. By stepping away from the constant demands of others, you can regain your focus, reflect on your goals, and make better decisions. The time you spend away allows you to evaluate your position without the influence of outside pressures. In this way, absence serves as both a strategic power move and a means of personal growth. It helps you avoid burnout while simultaneously increasing your worth in the eyes of others. The power of scarcity. The concept of scarcity is central to this law. When something is scarce, it automatically becomes more valuable. People tend to appreciate things more when they cannot have them all the time. This principle has been proven in psychology and marketing, where limited edition products or exclusive experiences generate more desire because people fear they will miss out on something special. Greene uses this principle to argue that when you are too available, you risk being taken for granted. But if you strategically make yourself scarce, others will begin to value your presence more highly. Scarcity isn't just about physical absence, it also applies to your energy and time. Greene suggests that by limiting your attention or emotional availability, you can make yourself appear more desirable. When you are constantly available for others to take advantage of, they may start to think they can get what they need from you whenever they want. By pulling back, you force them to work harder to get your time and energy, which makes it more precious when it is given. The law also speaks to the power of creating a mystique around yourself. People are drawn to mystery. When you allow yourself to remain somewhat elusive or enigmatic, people become more intrigued by you. They begin to fill in the gaps of what they don't know with their imagination. This mystique can make you appear more powerful and intriguing than if you were constantly on display for everyone to analyze. The less they know about you, the more they tend to elevate your image in their minds. Greene illustrates this with the example of artists and performers who know how to use absence to build their brand. Famous figures such as Beyoncé, Adele, and Prince have mastered the art of keeping a low profile between projects, only to emerge with new work that generates intense anticipation. Their absence fuels speculation, builds excitement, and makes their eventual return a major event. This strategy not only keeps their audience interested but also increases the value of their work. The balance of absence and presence. While the law advocates for the strategic use of absence, Greene also acknowledges the importance of balance. Too much absence can lead to neglect. If you are absent for too long or withdraw too often, people may forget about you or lose interest. Moderation is key. Absence should be used sparingly and strategically to avoid the risk of becoming irrelevant. The goal is to create just enough scarcity to make your presence more significant but not so much that it causes people to lose respect or interest in you. One of the challenges of this law is knowing when to return after a period of absence. When you reappear, you must ensure that the timing is right to capitalize on the anticipation that has built up in your absence. If you return too early or without making a significant impact, you risk undermining the value you've created through your absence. Greene stresses that timing your return is just as important as your absence. Your re-emergence should be seen as an event, something that commands attention and reinforces your power. Greene uses the example of Michelangelo, who was known for his extended periods of absence from the public eye. While he would retreat from public life to focus on his work, each time he reappeared, his reputation grew. His absence made his next work seem more important and valuable, and people eagerly anticipated his return to the scene. This created an aura of prestige and respect that only increased as time went on. The emotional aspect of absence. Another important aspect Greene highlights is the emotional impact of absence. By removing yourself from someone's life for a period, you force them to experience emotional longing. This longing, whether it's in personal relationships or professional ones, often leads people to reassess their feelings toward you. They may realize your worth or feel a sense of loss that increases their respect for you. Absence, therefore, can stir up emotional responses that help solidify your position of power, as people are now more likely to revalue you and see you in a new light. Chapter 17, Keep Others in Suspended Terror, Cultivate an Air of Unpredictability. In Chapter 17 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene emphasizes the importance of unpredictability in maintaining power and control over others. The law states that keeping people in a state of fear and uncertainty can make them more likely to submit to your authority and act in ways that benefit you. Unpredictability creates a sense of instability in the minds of your opponents, allies, and subordinates, causing them to be on edge, constantly second-guessing their actions, and wondering what you'll do next. This constant uncertainty forces others to remain in a state of alertness, where they become more cautious and more likely to follow your lead. Greene begins by explaining that humans are creatures of habit, and one of the easiest ways to control them is by exploiting their predictable behaviors. People are used to certain patterns of behavior, and when you break those patterns, you introduce an element of chaos that unsettles them. By cultivating unpredictability, you create an atmosphere where people cannot make confident decisions based on what they expect from you. This forces them to be cautious, which works to your advantage. The power of unpredictability. Unpredictability is an incredibly powerful tool because it disrupts the sense of control others feel they have over a situation. If someone believes they know exactly how you will react or what you will do next, they can manipulate the situation to their advantage. However, when they are unsure of your next move, they are forced to stay on their toes and remain more reactive than proactive. This shifts the power dynamic in your favor, making others more susceptible to your influence. One of the ways unpredictability can be applied is through shifting behaviors and emotions. If you are constantly consistent, predictable, and transparent in your actions, people become comfortable with you, and they can plan their next steps with relative ease. However, when you introduce unexpected actions, whether it's a sudden change in attitude, behavior, or decision-making, you prevent others from feeling comfortable and in control. This leaves them uncertain, and uncertainty leads to fear. As a result, they become more dependent on you for direction, and their own ability to strategize against you is diminished. The example of the fox and the lion. Greene draws from history to illustrate the power of unpredictability. He gives the example of Napoleon Bonaparte, who was known for his unpredictable military tactics. Napoleon would deliberately keep his enemies uncertain of his next move, sometimes feigning retreat to draw opponents into traps or launching surprise attacks from unexpected angles. His erratic approach made him an incredibly dangerous opponent, as his adversaries could never quite predict what he would do next. Napoleon's unpredictability made him one of the most feared military leaders in history. Similarly, Greene references the fox and the lion in ancient fables. The fox is known for its cleverness, while the lion is known for its strength. While the lion may dominate through sheer power, the fox uses its unpredictability to outsmart its enemies. The moral of this fable is that those who possess strength, such as the lion, can often be outwitted by the more unpredictable, cunning nature of the fox. Greene argues that strength alone is not enough to maintain power, it must be coupled with an element of unpredictability, which makes it harder for others to mount any resistance. Psychological warfare, the role of fear. Fear is a central component of this law. Greene discusses how fear is a powerful motivator in human behavior. When people are in fear of what you might do next, they are less likely to take bold actions that could challenge your power. Fear keeps people in check and discourages them from stepping outside their roles or acting against you. Unpredictability breeds fear, and when people are afraid of you, they tend to act more cautiously, ensuring that they don't do anything that might provoke you. The unpredictability of a person or situation is often more unsettling than even a known threat. When faced with clear, visible danger, people can prepare for it, even if they are afraid. However, when the danger is unknown or constantly shifting, people feel powerless. They are caught in a state of suspense, unable to make decisions with confidence. Greene argues that this sense of uncertainty leaves others in a constant state of fear, and when people fear you, they are more likely to give you the respect and deference you need to maintain power. Creating a sense of terror. The next step Greene discusses is how to create a sense of terror in the minds of those you wish to control. He emphasizes that outright cruelty is not always necessary, it's the fear of the unknown that will create the greatest sense of terror. By cultivating an air of unpredictability, you force others to anticipate the worst at all times. They become paranoid, constantly thinking about what you might do next, and this works to keep them in line. Greene gives the example of King Louis XI of France, who famously used unpredictability as a strategy to maintain control over his kingdom. He was known for being secretive, never revealing his intentions, and often making sudden, drastic decisions. His actions were unpredictable, and as a result, his court was in a constant state of fear and confusion. This strategy helped him eliminate rivals and maintain his hold on power. People feared making a move against him, not because of his strength, but because they couldn't predict what he would do next. The danger of overuse. While unpredictability is a potent tool for maintaining power, Greene warns against overusing this strategy. He notes that being too unpredictable can lead to instability, both for the leader and for their subordinates. If you become too erratic, people may begin to lose respect for you, or they may rebel against the chaos you create. Unpredictability, Greene stresses, should be strategic and controlled. Too much uncertainty can turn others against you. Greene explains that unpredictability should be used sparingly and in a targeted manner. It is most effective when it disrupts the expectations of your rivals or subordinates, forcing them to reevaluate their strategies. However, if your behavior is erratic all the time, people will no longer feel the need to follow your lead. In fact, they might start to feel that you are too dangerous to be trusted, which can backfire. The key is to create just enough instability to keep others guessing without turning your environment into complete chaos. The role of charisma. An important element of cultivating unpredictability is charisma. People are often drawn to individuals who are mysterious and unpredictable, especially if those individuals are charismatic. Charismatic leaders are able to keep others in suspense by maintaining a certain level of control over their emotional expressions and decisions. By hiding their intentions, charismatic leaders create an air of mystique that others find fascinating and appealing. This makes their unpredictability even more effective, as people want to stay on their good side in case they become a target of their unpredictable behavior. Greene emphasizes that charisma allows you to be unpredictable without losing respect. People will still follow you because they are drawn to your aura of mystery and power. However, if you lack charisma and try to be unpredictable, you may alienate others, as they won't respect your authority. Unpredictability must be paired with an element of charm to ensure it's effective in maintaining power. Chapter 18, Do not build fortresses to protect yourself, isolation is dangerous. In Chapter 18 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene examines the dangers of isolation and the importance of maintaining connections with the outside world. The law warns against the temptation to build fortresses, whether literal or metaphorical, to protect oneself from perceived threats. While it may seem logical to retreat from the world in times of danger or adversity, Greene argues that this strategy ultimately leads to weakness rather than strength. Isolation makes you vulnerable, and when you cut yourself off from others, you lose access to important sources of information, support, and influence. Greene begins by emphasizing the inherent dangers of trying to shield yourself too completely from the world. Isolation can seem appealing when you are under threat or experiencing conflict, as it creates a sense of safety and control. However, it also prevents you from understanding what's happening in your environment and limits your ability to react to changes. By cutting yourself off from others, you become disconnected from the pulse of society, and this detachment can ultimately undermine your power and effectiveness. The dangers of becoming isolated. One of the first points Greene makes is that fortresses, whether physical or emotional, cut off your access to information. In any situation, knowing what's happening in your environment is critical to maintaining power. Information is power, and when you isolate yourself, you lose the ability to see threats before they emerge. By staying connected to others, whether through business partnerships, friendships, or even informal alliances, you gain access to valuable insights that can help you navigate danger and make informed decisions. Greene provides historical examples of leaders who isolated themselves in times of crisis, only to see their fortunes crumble. For instance, he discusses how King Louis XIV of France, one of the most powerful monarchs in history, faced challenges in the later years of his reign because he became too disconnected from his court and the realities of the outside world. By withdrawing into his palace, he lost touch with his advisors, who could have offered him valuable advice, and he became increasingly vulnerable to conspiracies and rebellions. Isolation also creates a sense of distance between you and your allies. If you retreat too far from the world, people may feel that you have abandoned them, and your absence can lead to feelings of neglect or resentment. Power dynamics shift when people feel ignored, and over time, your allies may turn against you or pursue their own interests, leaving you isolated both physically and emotionally. Greene warns that the longer you isolate yourself, the more you risk losing the connections that keep you grounded and strong. The importance of social interaction. One of Greene's core arguments in this chapter is that human beings are social creatures, and our power often comes from the relationships we build with others. No one can succeed entirely on their own. We all rely on alliances, friendships, and networks for support, information, and resources. When we isolate ourselves, we sever these critical connections, and our ability to gather support diminishes. Greene stresses that even those who appear powerful or self-sufficient cannot maintain their position without external support. Greene draws on the example of Napoleon Bonaparte, who, despite his military genius, made the mistake of isolating himself from his inner circle in his later years. His increasing reliance on a small group of advisors and his detachment from the broader political landscape led to his downfall. He was no longer receiving the honest feedback and strategic input he needed, and as a result, he made costly mistakes that could have been avoided if he had remained connected to the world around him. The concept of fortress thinking. Greene explains that the mentality behind isolation is often driven by fear of being betrayed, hurt, or overpowered by external forces. When faced with a threat, the natural reaction is often to protect oneself by withdrawing into a safe space. This is what Greene refers to as fortress thinking, the belief that building walls and retreating from the outside world will provide safety. While this may seem like a rational decision in the short term, it creates a false sense of security. Instead of confronting the threat directly or strengthening connections, you opt for a passive approach that leaves you vulnerable in the long run. Fortress thinking prevents growth and stunts your ability to adapt to changing circumstances. By surrounding yourself with walls, whether physical or psychological, you cut off your ability to grow and evolve. Greene points out that change is inevitable, and the most successful people are those who can adapt to new situations, forge new relationships, and continue to learn from the world around them. Isolation makes this impossible, as it locks you into a static environment that no longer reflects the reality outside. The role of emotional intelligence. Another significant aspect of Greene's argument is the importance of emotional intelligence in maintaining power. Emotional intelligence refers to the ability to understand, manage, and influence your own emotions and the emotions of others. When you isolate yourself, you lose the opportunity to develop emotional connections with others, which can lead to a decrease in your ability to influence them effectively. Emotional intelligence is a key element of social power, and it thrives on interaction, empathy, and mutual understanding. When you cut yourself off from others, you lose the chance to gauge their emotions and understand their motivations. As a result, you become less capable of persuading others or forming the deep, trust-based relationships that are essential to long-term success. Greene argues that people who isolate themselves often become disconnected from the emotions of others and lose the ability to influence them in a meaningful way. By staying engaged with others, you improve your emotional intelligence, which in turn strengthens your power. Isolation and paranoia. Greene also discusses the negative psychological effects of isolation, which can lead to paranoia and insecurity. When you cut yourself off from the world, you begin to create a sense of conspiracy in your mind, assuming that others are plotting against you or seeking to undermine your power. This state of constant suspicion leads to irrational decisions and emotional instability, further isolating you from the people who could offer support or guidance. He warns that isolation fosters a sense of self-absorption that clouds your judgment and perception of reality. When you become focused solely on protecting yourself, you fail to see the bigger picture and the broader social dynamics at play. Your fear of betrayal becomes all-consuming, and this fear can ultimately be the very thing that undermines your power. Greene advises against retreating into isolation, as it only reinforces your fears and creates more problems than it solves. Staying connected, the value of the network. Greene highlights the value of staying connected to a network of people as a means of preserving power. A network, whether professional, social, or political, provides a safety net, offering support, resources, and advice when needed. A well-maintained network can act as a buffer against external threats, as it provides multiple channels of information and multiple sources of support. By keeping your network strong and active, you ensure that you are never truly alone in the face of adversity. Greene gives the example of Machiavelli, the famed political philosopher, who was known for his ability to maintain alliances and relationships with powerful figures, even when he faced exile and opposition. Machiavelli's ability to stay engaged with the political community, despite his personal hardships, allowed him to retain a measure of influence and power. Greene suggests that, like Machiavelli, we should constantly cultivate our networks and avoid the temptation to withdraw into isolation, which can sever these vital connections. Chapter 19, Do Not Offend the Wrong Person. In Chapter 19 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene explores the critical concept of knowing who to offend and who to avoid offending. He highlights the importance of understanding the power dynamics in any situation and choosing your battles wisely. The law encourages individuals to avoid making enemies with people who have the capacity for revenge or those who can harm your reputation, power, or influence. Greene reminds us that not all people are worth offending, and mistakes in judgment when it comes to this can have severe consequences. Greene argues that some individuals possess hidden depths of power that may not be immediately apparent. You could easily offend someone who, on the surface, seems harmless, only to later discover that they have the ability to destroy your career, your reputation, or your relationships. As a result, it is crucial to always be aware of the true nature of the people you are dealing with and not to underestimate anyone based on superficial appearances. Understanding the power of those around you. Greene starts by emphasizing that power is often hidden behind a person's actions or reputation. People might present themselves as weak, vulnerable, or unimportant, but they could possess significant power that becomes evident only when provoked. Underestimating people is one of the most dangerous mistakes you can make in the pursuit of power, and offending the wrong person could lead to unexpected consequences. Greene elaborates on the idea that power does not always announce itself in grand gestures or loud actions. It is often concealed behind subtlety, alliances, and the quiet accumulation of resources. The people you might think are weak or inconsequential may have allies, secret resources, or positions of influence that can hurt you when you least expect it. Being able to gauge the true potential of those around you is a crucial skill for anyone seeking to maintain or increase their power. The subtlety of revenge. One of the key aspects of this law is understanding the concept of revenge. Greene points out that revenge is often carried out in ways that are subtle and indirect. A person who has been offended may not always act immediately, but their desire for revenge can simmer beneath the surface for a long time. When they eventually strike back, they often do so in ways that are difficult to predict or defend against. Revenge can be quiet, calculated, and dangerous, making it all the more important to avoid offending the wrong people in the first place. Greene uses historical examples to illustrate how seemingly small offenses have led to devastating consequences. He points to the case of King Louis XVI of France, whose seemingly small mistakes and lack of foresight led to a revolution. Although he was a monarch with immense power, he offended people who had the ability to gather forces and dismantle his reign, eventually leading to his downfall. His failure to recognize the power of the people around him and his inability to gauge how they would react to his decisions ultimately led to his tragic end. The case of powerful figures who seek revenge. To further illustrate his point, Greene discusses the story of Nicolas Fouquet, the superintendent of finance under King Louis XIV. Fouquet made the mistake of offending the king, whom he considered an ally. He built an extravagant palace, Vaux le Vicomte, and threw a lavish party to celebrate it, hoping to impress the king. However, Louis XIV saw this as an insult to his own position and power. In an act of vengeance, Louis XIV had Fouquet imprisoned for life. This story shows how the wrong person, when offended, can use their power to bring down someone who seems to have greater wealth or influence. Fouquet's mistake was misjudging Louis XIV's response to his actions. He thought that his position, his wealth, and his power would be enough to shield him from any consequence. However, he failed to understand the king's desire for supremacy, and his personal ambitions directly threatened Louis's sense of control. The result was devastating. Fouquet lost everything, including his freedom. This story serves as a powerful reminder that never underestimate the potential for retaliation from those who possess power or influence. Knowing who to avoid offending. Greene emphasizes that not all people have the same capacity for harm, and therefore not all people are equally worth offending. You must understand the power dynamics involved and always assess whether the person you are dealing with has the means and motivation to seek revenge. The law is not suggesting that you live your life in fear of everyone, but it urges a strategic approach when interacting with others. For example, you should be aware of people who hold positions of influence, even if their power seems less overt. It might not always be the richest or most powerful people who will seek revenge against you. It could be someone with strategic connections, resources, or the ability to influence public opinion. Greene stresses that a person's true power often comes from their connections and the network of allies they can mobilize against you. The power of public perception. Another critical element in this chapter is the power of public perception. Offending the wrong person can have severe consequences not just for your career or your reputation but for your public image as well. In an age where public opinion can make or break careers, the damage caused by a well-timed offense to the wrong person can be devastating. Greene explains that once your actions are out in the public sphere, they become more than just private interactions. They can influence how others perceive you, your power, and your position in society. For example, Greene discusses how public figures who offend the wrong person often face a backlash that goes beyond the individual. Public opinion can turn against you, and this is something that even the most powerful individuals have to take into consideration. One public offense, whether intentional or not, can lead to a series of missteps that make it increasingly difficult to recover from the fallout. The law teaches that public perception is as important as private power, and offending the wrong person can damage your ability to maneuver through different social and political arenas. Assessing risk and making strategic decisions. One of the key lessons in Chapter 19 is about the art of calculated risk. Greene advises that it is essential to assess the potential consequences of your actions before you speak or act. Offending the wrong person is not necessarily about being cautious or weak, it's about being strategic in the choices you make. If the risk of retaliation outweighs any potential gain, then it's better to hold back and approach the situation with a more measured response. Sometimes, maintaining power requires a delicate balance, knowing when to take a stand and when to hold your tongue. While it's important to assert yourself in certain situations, you must also be prepared to recognize when an individual's potential for harm outweighs the benefits of confronting them. Greene advises learning how to pick your battles wisely, and understanding that not every confrontation is worth having. Chapter 20, Do Not Commit to Anyone. In Chapter 20 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene explores the importance of maintaining independence and avoiding commitment to any one individual or group. The central idea of the law is that committing yourself to a single person or cause too early can limit your options, make you vulnerable to manipulation, and place unnecessary restrictions on your ability to maneuver in the future. Greene suggests that in the pursuit of power, you should avoid becoming overly involved with any particular faction, organization, or individual, especially if doing so could compromise your ability to act freely and maintain control. This chapter examines the idea that flexibility and autonomy are among the most valuable assets you can possess in a world that constantly changes. Greene emphasizes that it is critical to stay neutral or undecided in certain situations and relationships, as this gives you the freedom to act according to your best interests without being tethered to a single cause or person. Commitment, Greene argues, can lead to an entanglement that ultimately limits your choices and diminishes your ability to respond to opportunities or threats. The dangers of commitment. Greene starts by examining the psychological effects of commitment. When you commit yourself to something or someone, you often feel compelled to honor that commitment, even if doing so goes against your best interests. This can create a sense of obligation that takes away your ability to act independently or make decisions that serve your long-term goals. The more you commit, the more your freedom to act becomes restricted, and the more accountable you become to others. Greene compares this to becoming entangled in a web, where every action you take is bound by the promises or allegiances you've made. Commitment also introduces the risk of dependency. When you place too much of your faith or resources into a single person or group, you make yourself dependent on them for success, power, or security. This dependency weakens your ability to act autonomously and makes it harder to extricate yourself from situations where your interests are no longer aligned with those you've committed to. Greene warns against submitting to such dependency, as it can leave you powerless and unable to chart your own course. The power of neutrality. One of Greene's central arguments is the power of neutrality. By staying neutral, you maintain the freedom to shift allegiances, form new partnerships, and make choices based on changing circumstances. Neutrality is not about avoiding relationships or commitments altogether, it's about avoiding becoming tied to a specific group, person, or cause in such a way that it limits your ability to act freely. Neutrality gives you the ability to observe, assess, and respond without being shackled by past decisions or alliances. Greene gives the example of pragmatists who succeed because they avoid the traps of overcommitment. A pragmatist, in this context, is someone who is not beholden to any one group or individual but who stays open to a variety of possibilities. Pragmatists can see opportunities that others cannot, and they are able to take action without the constraints that come with loyalty or obligation. In contrast, Greene points to the dangers faced by those who become too committed to a single cause or individual. He explains that those who are overly loyal or tied to a particular entity often become blinded by loyalty, making them unable to see the bigger picture. Commitment blinds people to alternative solutions, and over time, they become trapped by their own promises or alliances. Commitment and power dynamics. A critical part of this chapter is Greene's exploration of the power dynamics at play when you commit to someone or something. When you bind yourself to a person, organization, or cause, you essentially place your power in their hands. They now have the ability to control your movements, decisions, and actions. Greene points out that this is a form of surrendering power, as you are no longer the sole decision-maker. One of Greene's most striking examples of this is the story of Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, a French diplomat who mastered the art of remaining neutral. Throughout his career, Talleyrand was able to shift allegiances in a way that kept him in power, despite changing political regimes. By never committing fully to one side, he ensured that he would always be able to adapt to new opportunities and continue to wield influence, regardless of the political shifts happening around him. Talleyrand's career shows how maintaining flexibility and avoiding firm commitment to one faction can be a path to survival and success. Greene contrasts this with the fate of individuals who, through loyalty or commitment to a particular ruler, cause, or organization, find themselves unable to adapt when circumstances change, leading to their downfall. How to avoid commitment. Greene does not advocate for complete disengagement from relationships or causes. Instead, he urges people to engage selectively. This means being involved enough to gain valuable insight and influence, but not so involved that you lose your ability to move freely. He suggests keeping a certain level of distance or detachment that allows you to remain above the fray while still reaping the benefits of relationships. The key to avoiding the pitfalls of commitment is to always keep your options open. When you remain unattached, you avoid putting yourself in a position where you must choose between loyalty and your own self-interest. Instead of focusing too deeply on one path, Greene advocates for staying open to new possibilities and keeping your choices as wide and varied as possible. One strategy Greene mentions is the concept of the playing both sides. This does not mean outright manipulation, but rather the ability to maintain ties with multiple people or groups, understanding that they may be in conflict with each other. By doing this, you position yourself as someone who is valuable to both sides, allowing you to gain favor from all parties while maintaining the freedom to act according to your needs. The dangers of overcommitment. Greene further underscores the risks of overcommitment by pointing to historical figures who failed to understand the value of flexibility. For example, he looks at Napoleon Bonaparte and his commitment to conquering Europe. Napoleon's obsession with his goal eventually led to his downfall, as his commitments to territorial expansion and his allies became a heavy burden. His unwavering focus on one goal made it difficult for him to adapt to changing circumstances, and ultimately, his empire collapsed as a result. Greene notes that overcommitment can lead to rigidity, making it impossible to see other possible paths to success. The more you commit, the more your options narrow, and the more you expose yourself to failure when circumstances change unexpectedly. Chapter 21, Play a Sucker to Catch a Sucker, Seem Dumber Than Your Mark. In Chapter 21 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene introduces the intriguing and often counterintuitive concept of feigning ignorance to manipulate others and gain an advantage. The central idea behind the law is that sometimes, in order to outmaneuver a more powerful or knowledgeable individual, you must appear less intelligent or capable than you actually are. By underestimating you, your opponent or target may drop their guard, allowing you to exploit their overconfidence and outsmart them. Greene argues that intelligence and competence can be weapons, but there is a certain power in apparent ignorance. When you make others believe you are weaker, less knowledgeable, or less capable, they may become complacent or overconfident, believing they are in control. In turn, you can use this false perception to your advantage, catching them off guard and turning the situation in your favor. The power of underestimation. Greene begins by explaining that underestimation is a potent tool when used strategically. When people think you are dumber or less capable than you really are, they are less likely to be cautious around you. This can lead them to make mistakes or overlook potential threats, giving you the opportunity to strike at the right moment. By creating the illusion of weakness, you cause others to underestimate your abilities, which makes it easier to gain an advantage without them realizing it. One of the key ideas in this chapter is the concept of playing dumb or appearing inferior in order to lull your opponents into a false sense of security. This allows you to learn from them, understand their strategies, and gather information that can later be used against them. Greene points out that often, the best way to defeat an opponent is to allow them to think they have won or that they are in control, all the while preparing to turn the tables when they least expect it. The strategy of feigned ignorance. Greene provides examples of historical figures and strategies where appearing ignorant or less capable led to success. He highlights that many great tacticians, politicians, and leaders have used this approach to gain power or influence. In particular, he points to Napoleon Bonaparte, who, at times, would feign ignorance of certain military tactics or political matters, thereby allowing others to underestimate his brilliance. This would lead opponents to become too comfortable, and Napoleon could then take advantage of their overconfidence and execute his plans with precision. This tactic, as Greene explains, is a psychological game that plays on the ego of your opponent. The key is not to act so ignorant that it becomes obvious you're playing a role, but to seem less capable than you are. The appearance of vulnerability makes people lower their defenses and reveal more information than they normally would. Greene emphasizes that playing dumb is not about acting helpless or weak, but rather about making others believe that you are not as dangerous as you truly are. The concept of the mark. In the context of this law, the mark is the person who becomes the target of your manipulation. The mark is the one who has underestimated you and assumes they have the upper hand. Greene explains that the mark is often someone who has become too confident or blinded by their own intelligence. They believe they have figured you out, and in doing so, they become susceptible to manipulation. For example, Greene discusses how fraudsters and con artists often use this law to deceive their victims. By appearing innocent, gullible, or unaware, they get their targets to reveal personal information or make decisions that benefit the con artist. These deceptive tactics exploit the target's pride or self-assuredness, which ultimately leads to the target being outsmarted. Greene points out that the more someone believes they are smarter or more experienced than you, the more vulnerable they become to manipulation. This is a fundamental aspect of human nature. People often feel the need to prove their superiority, and in doing so, they open themselves up to exploitation. As a result, by seeming less intelligent, you can subtly encourage your mark to act in a way that will benefit you. The art of deception. Greene introduces the concept of deception as one of the central tools used in playing a sucker to catch a sucker. He explains that the art of deception involves creating an image or persona that is false but convincing. The goal is not to completely deceive others into thinking you are something you are not, but to mislead them in a way that gives you an advantage. One key point that Greene makes is that deception must be subtle. If you act too obviously ignorant or incapable, people will catch on to your game and your plan will fail. Instead, you must project just enough ignorance or naivety to lead others to think they have the upper hand, while still maintaining the ability to strike when the moment is right. This level of deception requires self-discipline and the ability to control your emotions and actions, ensuring that you don't overplay your hand. Greene suggests that this strategy works particularly well in situations where people are trying to impress or outshine others. When someone is focused on showing their superiority, they often become so absorbed in their own sense of importance that they fail to see the potential threat right in front of them. This is where the power of appearing dumber than your mark becomes evident. You let them believe they are superior and allow them to become complacent, making them more likely to make mistakes. Historical examples of seeming dumber. To illustrate the concept, Greene draws on historical examples of figures who mastered the art of playing dumber than they really were. One such example is the famous military strategist Sun Tzu, who is often quoted as saying, "All warfare is based on deception." Sun Tzu would often use misdirection and feigned ignorance to confuse his enemies and make them act in ways that played to his advantage. By making himself appear weaker or less capable, Sun Tzu would lure his enemies into traps, where they would be outmaneuvered and defeated. Another example Greene highlights is the story of Catherine de' Medici, who used her intelligence and manipulation to rise to power in the French court. She often employed the tactic of feigning ignorance, making her appear less dangerous than she actually was. This led her rivals to underestimate her and allowed her to quietly build a powerful network of supporters. Over time, she used this subtle strategy to take control of the French monarchy. The importance of timing and patience. Greene stresses that this strategy requires patience and timing. Playing the role of a sucker or acting dumber than you are is not about rushing into the game, but about waiting for the right moment to strike. Patience allows you to observe your mark, learn their weaknesses, and understand their thought process. Only then can you act with precision, catching them when their guard is down. Moreover, Greene advises that you should never reveal your true intentions prematurely. The more you play the part of the sucker, the more information you will gather about your mark's true vulnerabilities. Once the mark has revealed enough, you can capitalize on their weaknesses to gain the upper hand. Chapter 22, Use the Surrender Tactic, Transform Weakness into Power. In Chapter 22 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene introduces a seemingly paradoxical concept, surrendering as a means to gain power. The central idea of this chapter is that when faced with a more powerful opponent or a situation where you have no real leverage, surrendering can often be a more strategic move than direct confrontation. Greene explains how you can use surrender not as a sign of weakness, but as a way to regain control and eventually come out on top. At first glance, the concept of surrendering may seem counterintuitive. After all, isn't power about dominating and winning? Greene argues that surrendering can be a powerful tactic when used at the right moment. By yielding, you can buy yourself time, reduce resistance, and create an opportunity to manipulate the situation to your advantage later on. The power of yielding. Greene begins by exploring the idea that sometimes it's smarter to give up the fight temporarily rather than continue to resist a more powerful force. This tactic involves knowing when to step back and appear to give in, allowing your opponent to think they've won. The key is not to surrender out of desperation, but rather to surrender strategically, knowing that the battle is not over. When you surrender, you stop resisting and accept the circumstances, for a moment. This may allow your opponent to become complacent or to misunderstand your true intentions, which sets the stage for future retaliation. Greene explains that the idea is to let go of the immediate need to win and instead focus on the long-term goal. By relinquishing power for a time, you can gain the upper hand when your opponent least expects it. The temporary defeat strategy. Greene refers to the temporary defeat strategy as one that redirects your opponent's focus. When you surrender or seem to accept defeat, you often disarm your opponent's aggression. They may perceive your submission as a sign of weakness or defeat, which leads them to underestimate you. However, while they think they are in control, you are using the time to prepare for your next move, gather information, and rework your strategy. The concept of playing the long game is key to this tactic. Surrender is not about giving up entirely or admitting defeat, it is about strategically withdrawing from the fight at a moment when it is beneficial. Greene notes that by doing this, you can often restore your strength and position yourself for a future opportunity to regain control and turn the tables on your opponent. Mastering the art of disarming. One of the major components of using the surrender tactic effectively is the ability to disarm your opponent emotionally. This involves making them believe that they have nothing to fear from you, that you are no longer a threat. When your opponent feels that they have subdued you, they may let their guard down. This emotional disarmament is crucial to gaining the upper hand later on. Greene provides examples from history to illustrate this concept. For instance, he talks about how some military leaders have used feigned weakness to disorient their enemies, making them believe that they are fighting an easier battle than they anticipated. Once the enemy has become complacent, the leaders could then relaunch their attack with renewed strength, catching their adversaries off guard. In this way, the surrender tactic can be used to manipulate emotions and perceptions. By appearing defeated, you can encourage your opponent to lower their defenses. Once they do, you can use the moment of their vulnerability to reassert your power in a more advantageous position. The psychological shift of surrendering. Greene explains that surrendering can also help shift the psychology of both yourself and your opponent. When you surrender, you might feel a sense of loss, but you are temporarily freeing yourself from the burden of fighting. This mental shift can provide you with the clarity and strength you need to come back stronger. On the other hand, your opponent might begin to feel a false sense of security. They may start to think that they have won the battle, but this sense of victory can make them less vigilant. When they perceive that they have defeated you, they may make rash decisions or overreach in ways that will allow you to take advantage of their mistakes later on. In essence, surrendering becomes a psychological game. Greene argues that appearing weak can trick your opponent into believing they have the power, while secretly plotting your next move. This mental shift can be the difference between being defeated outright and turning the situation in your favor when the right opportunity arises. Historical examples of strategic surrender. Greene offers several historical examples of leaders who mastered the art of surrender. One notable example he provides is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte, who was known for his strategic retreats. Napoleon was not above withdrawing in the face of overwhelming odds, only to return when the circumstances were more favorable. His ability to surrender at key moments allowed him to regroup and plan his next move, leading to eventual victories. Another historical figure mentioned is Catherine de' Medici, the Queen of France, who was known for her ability to play the long game. She would sometimes appear to surrender to her political rivals, only to gain their trust and later use their weaknesses against them. By adopting a facade of humility and surrender, Catherine was able to play a key role in French politics, maneuvering her rivals into compromising positions. These examples underscore the effectiveness of the surrender tactic. Greene emphasizes that understanding when to yield is a critical part of gaining power. By surrendering in the right circumstances, you can preserve your energy and prepare for a counterattack that will position you for success. When to surrender and when not to. Greene highlights that the timing of surrender is crucial. Surrendering should not be done out of fear or weakness, but rather as a calculated decision in a larger strategy. He warns against surrendering too soon, as this could signal a lack of resolve and leave you vulnerable. Instead, surrender should be used at a time when resistance is futile or when you can use the situation to gain a strategic advantage in the future. The key is to pick your battles wisely. By evaluating the situation and determining when you are at a disadvantage, you can use surrender as a way to preserve your resources and buy time for a more favorable moment to act. Greene stresses that wisdom lies in knowing when to fight and when to temporarily step back. The final power of surrender. In conclusion, Chapter 22, Use the Surrender Tactic, Transform Weakness into Power, teaches that surrender can be a powerful tool when wielded correctly. Rather than seeing surrender as a sign of weakness, Greene urges readers to view it as a strategic decision that allows for future strength. By yielding in the right moments, you can disarm your opponent, lower their defenses, and ultimately turn the tables in your favor. This tactic is all about timing, psychology, and playing the long game, and when executed correctly, it can lead to significant victories even in seemingly hopeless situations. Chapter 23, Concentrate Your Forces. In Chapter 23 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene presents the concept of concentration, the strategic decision to focus your efforts and energy in one place, at the right time. Greene argues that dispersing your resources and trying to achieve multiple goals at once leads to weakness and inefficiency. By concentrating your forces, whether in terms of time, attention, or resources, you can amplify your power and achieve greater success. Greene begins by explaining how dispersing your energy over many areas can lead to scattered results. He uses the analogy of a person trying to chase multiple opportunities, all of which are far from one another. This person may end up doing a little bit in many areas but never making substantial progress in any. The lesson is simple: you can't be effective if you're trying to do too many things at once. Focusing your energy on a singular objective will allow you to make a bigger impact, allowing you to accumulate strength that would otherwise be lost. The power of focus. Greene emphasizes that concentration isn't just about working harder, but working smarter. It's about making the conscious decision to focus on one task, goal, or area at a time. This tactic allows you to harness all your energy and attention on a singular mission, which results in a higher level of performance and effectiveness. In both the business world and military strategy, the best results often come when forces are concentrated rather than spread thin. He explains that concentration is not about ignoring all other opportunities. It's about knowing when to commit to one path and putting all your effort into it. When your attention is fragmented, you can't possibly succeed at the highest level. Therefore, concentration of forces is a key law to follow if you wish to achieve mastery in any domain, whether personal or professional. Historical examples of concentration. Greene illustrates the idea of concentration with historical examples to show how it has been a central element in the success of many powerful figures. One example he provides is Napoleon Bonaparte, whose military genius was partly attributed to his ability to concentrate his forces in key moments. Napoleon's famous battle tactics were built on focusing his strength at a specific point on the battlefield, where he could break the enemy's line and create a decisive victory. Another historical figure highlighted is Julius Caesar, whose military strategy involved focusing his resources on key battles that would give him the greatest chance for success. By applying a concentrated effort at critical junctures, Caesar was able to expand his power rapidly and effectively. Both Napoleon and Caesar demonstrate the principle that concentrating your forces during key moments can lead to extraordinary success. Avoiding the dangers of overextension. While concentrating forces is powerful, Greene warns about the danger of overextension. If you concentrate all your resources in one area and fail, you might face catastrophic consequences. This is why timing is crucial. Knowing when and where to direct all your energy can determine whether or not your plan will succeed. One example of overextension is the story of the German army's invasion of Russia during World War II. Hitler's forces were concentrated in the wrong place and spread across an overwhelming front. They overextended themselves, and as a result, they faced severe losses. This disastrous overextension highlights the importance of concentrating your forces in the right place and at the right time. Greene encourages readers to analyze situations carefully and to never fall into the trap of believing that success can be achieved by simply applying force to multiple fronts at once. Instead, the focus should be on strategic concentration in key areas where victory is most likely. The psychology of concentration. Concentration is not just a physical or strategic decision, it is also a psychological one. Greene explains that focusing your attention on one goal allows you to have a clearer vision and to develop a stronger sense of purpose. When your attention is scattered, you experience confusion and dilution of purpose, which in turn leads to weakness. By concentrating your focus, you can channel your energy in ways that create momentum. This momentum, in turn, can become a powerful force that leads to breakthroughs and success. The more you focus on something, the more you begin to see opportunities, patterns, and ways forward that others might overlook. Concentration in personal life. The principle of concentration applies not just to military tactics or business strategies, but also to personal life. Greene asserts that successful individuals focus their energy on the areas of their lives that matter most to them. Whether it's career development, relationships, or personal growth, individuals who concentrate their efforts on one or two things at a time often perform better and feel more fulfilled. People who attempt to juggle too many personal goals often find themselves burnt out or unfulfilled. Concentrating your energy in areas that resonate deeply with you can lead to more meaningful success and happiness. Greene notes that you need to be disciplined in how you divide your time and energy. If you want to achieve something great, you must first commit to it fully and let go of distractions. Avoiding the pitfalls of scattered focus. Another danger Greene highlights is the constant temptation to switch focus whenever something new or shiny catches your attention. It's common for people to jump from one idea to another without completing anything, which leads to dispersed energy and lack of achievement. Instead, Greene suggests that resisting the urge to scatter your focus is vital. Whether it's in business, politics, or personal projects, you must learn to refine your concentration to a single, clear objective. This clarity of purpose will allow you to move with precision and force toward your desired outcome. By sticking with your chosen focus, even when challenges arise, you will find greater success. The role of patience in concentration. Concentration isn't just about working harder or more quickly. It also requires a sense of patience. You need to be able to wait for the right moment and know that quick wins can often lead to long-term failure. By concentrating your forces at the right moment, you can build your strength steadily, leading to more sustainable success. Greene suggests that patience in concentration allows you to gather momentum over time. Like the story of David and Goliath, where David concentrated all his energy into a single, precise shot, waiting for the right moment to strike is often more effective than scattering efforts. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to hold back and when to strike decisively. Chapter 24, Play the Perfect Courtier. In Chapter 24 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene presents the idea of mastering the art of being a courtier, someone who is adept at navigating the social and political intricacies of a high-stakes environment. The courtier is someone who knows how to play the game of power and influence within any structured society, whether in a royal court, corporate environment, or political arena. This chapter is all about understanding the subtle rules of social maneuvering and using them to your advantage without ever seeming overtly ambitious. Greene begins by acknowledging that many people in positions of power may not have earned that power directly. Instead, they often rely on surrounding themselves with advisors, supporters, and followers who provide counsel, loyalty, and influence. The courtier, therefore, is an expert in knowing how to position themselves within such systems, gaining favor and influence without appearing overly assertive. The perfect courtier, who are they? Greene provides the archetype of the perfect courtier, a person who understands the power dynamics around them and knows how to use charm, flattery, and subtlety to gain favor and move forward. The courtier is never blunt or obvious. They know how to navigate the feelings, emotions, and insecurities of those in power, and they skillfully adapt their behavior to align with the desires and moods of the influential people around them. A courtier is someone who knows how to be both invisible and indispensable. They are loyal, but they do not seek to take over or overshadow their superiors. Instead, they provide value by offering insight, support, and expertise while remaining humble and deferential. In the world of power, the courtier is like a shadow, always in the background but always present, ensuring their influence is felt without direct confrontation. Flattery and charm, tools of the courtier. One of the key elements of being a successful courtier is flattery, but Greene makes it clear that flattery must be genuine and carefully tailored to the person being flattered. A courtier understands that praise is a powerful tool, especially when used to affirm the desires, ambitions, and egos of those in power. However, Greene stresses that flattery should never be overdone or too obvious. It needs to be subtle, discreet, and timely. The perfect courtier knows when to compliment, when to remain silent, and when to align their actions with the goals of their superior. Charm is a technique that, when used correctly, can make a person feel important, heard, and valued. The courtier never makes their intentions too apparent, they simply blend in and subtly steer situations toward their own benefit. The art of managing power dynamics. Another important element of being a perfect courtier is the ability to manage the delicate balance of power dynamics. Greene explains that in any environment, there are always those who hold power and those who seek it. A successful courtier is someone who can position themselves in such a way that they can tap into the flow of power, becoming indispensable to those in control while keeping their own ambitions hidden. The courtier must also know when to be subservient and when to take charge, as well as when to play the middle ground. A courtier is not merely a passive follower, they are also active manipulators of the relationships around them. They know when to step in to offer their support and when to step back, allowing others to take the lead while still ensuring that their influence remains. Navigating court politics. Greene goes on to explain the intricacies of court politics, particularly in royal or corporate settings. He notes that in these high-stakes environments, individuals are constantly vying for attention, influence, and resources. The courtier must therefore be adept at understanding the unspoken rules of these spaces and at navigating the social hierarchies with subtlety. For example, in a corporate setting, a courtier might play the role of middleman, aligning themselves with the top executives while also gaining the support of other influential figures within the company. This positioning allows them to gain access to important information, shape conversations, and ultimately secure power for themselves in a non-confrontational manner. The courtier's subtle manipulations. Greene also delves into the more subtle manipulations a courtier can employ to maintain their power. This includes things like controlling information, suggesting ideas without taking credit for them, and reinforcing others' ideas in such a way that it seems like the powerful person came up with them. The courtier understands that powerful people are often insecure, and they can use this insecurity to their advantage by appealing to these emotions in a calculated way. The key to this manipulation is to remain invisible and let others believe they are in control, all the while subtly shaping the outcomes of situations to benefit yourself. The courtier must never push too hard, always staying one step behind the scenes, but making sure their actions are subtly driving results. The importance of patience and timing. Another vital trait of the perfect courtier is patience. The courtier understands that gaining power takes time, and often the best way to achieve it is by waiting for the right moment. Rather than pushing too hard or too quickly, the courtier waits for others to reveal their weaknesses or for opportunities to arise. By staying patient and alert, they can act at just the right time, capitalizing on their knowledge of the situation and the people involved. Greene also notes that timing is everything in the world of power. The courtier knows when to enter a conversation, when to withdraw, and when to play their cards in order to achieve the most advantageous outcomes. A courtier who lacks patience and timing will be easily detected and dismissed, but one who masters both will be an indispensable figure in the court or organization. Avoiding the downfall of the courtier. Greene advises that while being a courtier can provide power and influence, it is a delicate role that requires constant attention and awareness. The courtier must avoid becoming too visible, too ambitious, or too independent. If they ever make their power grabs too obvious, they risk being cast aside or exposed as a threat. The courtier's greatest strength is their ability to remain in the shadows, shaping events without ever stepping into the light. In conclusion, Greene's chapter 24 teaches us that the perfect courtier is someone who can master the subtle art of flattery, navigate complex power dynamics, and maneuver their way through the complexities of influence without ever appearing to seek it directly. They are experts at reading people, playing the game, and seizing power at just the right moment. Whether in a royal court, corporate setting, or any competitive environment, the courtier plays a critical role in shaping the outcome of power struggles. The key is to know how to appeal to others, remain unseen, and let power come to you, all while cultivating a network of support. Chapter 25, Recreate Yourself. In Chapter 25 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene introduces one of the most empowering laws: recreate yourself. This law stresses the importance of self-transformation, the idea that you can reinvent who you are, no matter where you begin in life, and control how others perceive you. It's about shaping your own identity and crafting a persona that serves your goals, whether they are personal, professional, or political. Greene opens the chapter with the idea that people are often bound by the roles others assign them. From a young age, society, family, and friends start labeling us, whether as the quiet one, the ambitious one, the dreamer, or the leader. These labels limit us because they fix us in one place, often restricting our growth and potential. The power in recreating yourself is about casting off these limitations, refusing to accept the roles that others want to assign to you, and instead, creating your own path forward. The power of reinvention. Greene points out that reinvention is not simply about changing clothes, looks, or superficial aspects of yourself. It's about altering your fundamental nature and presenting a version of yourself that is aligned with your true desires and aspirations. The key to this reinvention is to create a new image and project it into the world with confidence. This involves intentionally crafting your character, not just in how you dress, but in how you speak, act, and think. You become who you decide to be, not who others expect you to be. One historical example Greene uses is the case of Louis XIV of France, also known as the Sun King. He recreated himself from being the seemingly powerless child of a weak king into the absolute monarch of France. Through strategic actions, he changed his image and redefined the French monarchy as a symbol of power, grandeur, and divine right. By creating a new identity, Louis transformed his destiny and the future of his nation. The process of reinvention. Recreating yourself is not an overnight process. It requires patience, foresight, and constant vigilance in how you project yourself. Greene identifies the following steps to achieve this kind of transformation. Understand yourself. Before you can recreate yourself, you must first understand your true desires and aspirations. What do you want to achieve? What parts of your current self do you want to change, and why? Take time to reflect on your strengths, weaknesses, and goals. Decide what you want to be. To create a new persona, you need to have a clear idea of what you want to become. Whether you want to be a powerful leader, a respected innovator, or a charismatic figure, decide on the image you want to project to the world. It's essential to have a vision for your new identity. Control your image. Your image is how the world perceives you. Greene emphasizes the importance of controlling your public persona carefully. This might involve altering your style, adopting new habits, or presenting a different attitude. When you control how others see you, you can direct the course of your interactions and opportunities. Create the story. Part of recreating yourself involves creating a narrative around who you are and what you stand for. This is important because people often remember stories more than facts. Greene suggests using symbolism or dramatic gestures to cement your new persona in people's minds. This is about making your story memorable and impactful. Remain flexible and adapt. Once you've begun the process of reinvention, it's crucial to remain adaptable. The new version of yourself might need adjustments as you encounter new circumstances or meet different challenges. Your ability to evolve while staying true to your core goals will determine how successful your transformation is. The art of masking your true self. One of the key ideas in Chapter 25 is that reinvention often involves masking or hiding your true self from others. Greene explains that people are unpredictable and may react negatively if they sense you are attempting to manipulate your identity. By wearing a mask, you can control your image without exposing your true intentions. This allows you to play the role of the perfect version of yourself while hiding parts of your personality or ambitions that could expose you to danger or judgment. This idea ties back to the concept of the actor. A successful reinvention requires adopting the mindset of an actor on stage. One who understands the script, delivers the performance with confidence, and knows how to change roles as needed. You might be a calm, calculated strategist in one situation, and a charismatic leader in another. Greene encourages the reader to use this flexibility to adapt to the needs of the moment. The influence of external forces. Greene also examines how external forces, such as your environment or the people around you, can either hinder or propel your reinvention. Often, individuals are too influenced by the opinions and judgments of others. However, successful reinvention requires detachment from the expectations of others. Greene provides the example of Machiavelli, who knew how to navigate the shifting tides of fortune and power in Renaissance Italy. Machiavelli was able to recreate himself through his writings, redefining the ideas of power and strategy that are still influential today. The message here is clear: don't let your past or the opinions of others limit your future. If you truly want to recreate yourself, you need to break free from the chains of past judgments and perceptions. Reinvention is about taking the reins of your life and steering it in the direction you want, regardless of the forces trying to hold you back. Embracing the power of transformation. Greene concludes the chapter by emphasizing that the power of transformation lies in your ability to adapt and evolve. Whether in business, politics, or personal life, the people who succeed are often those who know how to reinvent themselves. By doing so, they can meet new challenges, seize new opportunities, and continue to grow without being constrained by their past identities or current situations. Greene underscores that reinvention doesn't just apply to your public persona but also to your inner self. It's about creating the version of yourself that aligns with your goals and gives you the power to transform your reality. Just as an actor prepares for a role, you must also be prepared to shed your old identity and embrace a new, more powerful one. Reinvention allows you to take control of your narrative and shape your destiny. Chapter 26, Keep Your Hands Clean. In Chapter 26 of the 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene introduces the critical concept of keeping your hands clean in matters of power, politics, and influence. The core message of the chapter is about maintaining a reputation of integrity, even if, in reality, you're involved in behind-the-scenes manipulations or questionable tactics. Greene suggests that in order to maintain power and influence, it is essential to avoid getting directly associated with actions that may damage your reputation or expose you to backlash. Greene uses a powerful metaphor, keeping your hands clean, to describe the importance of avoiding visible involvement in controversial or unethical activities. While power struggles and manipulations are inevitable in high-stakes environments, the key is to stay unseen, to remain detached, and to make sure others carry the burden of negative actions or blame. By doing this, you ensure that you're not tarnishing your image, reputation, or long-term prospects. The importance of reputation. Greene opens the chapter by underscoring the importance of reputation in the world of power. Reputation is everything. It's the foundation upon which your influence and authority are built. Once your reputation is damaged, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to rebuild. Therefore, keeping your hands clean, remaining untainted by unethical or damaging actions, ensures that your reputation remains intact and that others continue to see you as a reliable, trustworthy figure. He emphasizes that appearances matter far more than what is actually happening behind the scenes. People judge based on what they can see and perceive, so the key is to always project an image of being above reproach, of maintaining a moral high ground, even when involved in power struggles. This is an act of strategic detachment, where you distance yourself from the messy or controversial aspects of a situation while still benefiting from it. The role of the scapegoat. One of the main strategies for keeping your hands clean is to use scapegoats, others who can take the fall for decisions or actions that could damage your reputation. Greene highlights that skilled leaders often use subordinates or allies to carry out the tasks that are considered unsavory, knowing that the blame for any negative outcomes can be pinned on them instead of the leader. A historical example of this principle is King Louis XVI of France. Although the king made the ultimate decision to go to war and make risky moves, he was careful to shield himself from the fallout. He relied on his advisors, generals, and ministers to execute his policies, allowing them to take the blame when things went wrong. By doing so, Louis protected his own reputation and power. Greene's key point here is that if you're in a position of power, you must be careful not to be caught in any situation where you could be accused of wrongdoing. Always make sure that someone else is responsible for the messes you may cause. Use others as shields, and when necessary, sacrifice them to protect your standing. Manipulating perception. The chapter then explores the idea of manipulating perception. To keep your hands clean, you must not only avoid getting dirty yourself, but also manage how others perceive your actions. Greene stresses that perception is often more important than reality, and that careful image management can make the difference between retaining power and losing it. For example, if a group of people around you is doing something unethical or dishonest, you must distance yourself from them, even if you're involved in the decision-making or have benefited from the results. In doing so, you protect your image and reputation, while allowing others to take the heat when the situation inevitably blows up. You don't have to be innocent, but you must appear so. This is a classic strategy used by politicians, businessmen, and royalty throughout history. The art of delegation. In keeping with the theme of avoiding direct involvement, Greene also discusses the art of delegation. Power lies not only in your ability to make decisions but also in your ability to delegate the execution of those decisions to others. Delegating tasks to others ensures that you remain at the center of action without dirtying your hands. Delegation allows you to maintain a sense of distance and control, without taking on the negative consequences of a particular action. The essence of delegation is that it allows you to remain strategic, focusing on the big picture while letting others handle the gritty details. But Greene warns that delegating too much responsibility without oversight can backfire. It's important to choose the right people to carry out your will and ensure that they are accountable for their actions. Using the law of power to outsmart enemies. Another aspect Greene highlights is that keeping your hands clean can be a critical weapon when dealing with adversaries or enemies. Often, those who attempt to challenge you will be ready to sully their own reputations in an effort to discredit you. However, if you remain above the fray, maintaining an image of purity, your enemies will be left exposed, and you can continue to build your power from the sidelines. In these situations, remaining composed and avoiding rash actions ensures that you're in control. While your adversaries may take drastic, desperate steps, your ability to stay clean and avoid getting caught in their schemes gives you an unmatched advantage. By not being associated with the dirty work, you protect yourself from backlash while continuing to weaken your enemies.